Chapter 755. Su Qinghui slept soundly. He had been running back and forth in Rong City for the past few days. In addition, he had just negotiated a new investment case. At this hour he was in a deep sleep. In a daze he heard his phone ringing. He waited for it to ring for a while before picking it up. Su Qinghui. Yes. The familiar voice on the other end of the line woke Su Qinghui up immediately. He looked at the time and didn't understand why Li Qianxue would call him at this time. What's wrong? Li Qianxue had never looked for him at this time. He suddenly became nervous. He quickly sat up and asked, "What happened? What happened to you?" Li Qianxue's voice paused. What should she say? She said she had a nightmare. She dreamed of the time when Su Qinghui was with her. She said that her heart was shaken, but she didn't want to forgive Su Qinghui so easily. She found that she couldn't seem to tell Su Qinghui those emotions. She looked out the window at the night sky and lay down again. I can't sleep. Sing for me. Singing to her at 3 in the morning? Su Qinghui took some time to recover. Qianxue, anything. Qianxue, Su Qinghui said helplessly, I can't sing. When it came to socializing he would go to some places but he really didn't know how to sing. The last time he sang was during music class at school. How many years has it been? I said sing whatever you want. She closed her eyes. If you don't sing, you don't have to come to me from tomorrow onwards. Su Qinghui never thought that one day he would hear such a request from Li Qianxue. He didn't know how to react for a moment. Qianxue, you're making things difficult for me. Is that so? Li Qianxue openly admitted, yes, I am making things difficult for you. Are you going to sing or not? Su Qinghui was speechless. He really didn't expect Li Qianxue to be so willful at her age. If you don't sing, I'll hang up the phone. Tomorrow I'll sing. Su Qinghui agreed, but it was really difficult for him. He almost never sang. At this time, when Li Qianxue asked him to sing, he had no idea what to sing. After thinking for a long time, he remembered a song that his mother loved to listen to when she was a nurse. At that time, Su Qinghui's mother played that song every day. After a long time, Su Qinghui also learned to sing it. Now that Li Qianxue asked him to sing, the only song he could think of was that. The night at the naval port is quiet. The waves rocked the warship gently. The young sailor rested his head on the waves, smiling sweetly in his sleep. When he spoke, Li Qianxue was stunned. She didn't expect that Su Qinghui could really sing. In all these years she had never heard him drink. It sounded surprisingly good. His voice was gentle and elegant. His voice came through the phone gently, with an indescribable magnetism and sensuality. Gently blow the sea breeze, gently sway the waves. She didn't ask him to stop, so he kept singing. At first, Li Qianxue was very awake. Gradually, she fell asleep listening to Su Qinghui's singing. Su Qinghui sang it twice but didn't get a response. After singing it twice, he really couldn't find a second song that he knew. Qianxue? Qianxue? He gently called her name twice, but he heard a light breathing sound coming from the other end of the phone. He held the phone and listened to Li Qianxue's breathing on the other end of the phone. Although he didn't understand why she had insomnia today and why she suddenly asked him to sing. Thinking of Li Qianxue's request just now, Su Qinghui suddenly smiled. He didn't hang up the phone and just turned on the speaker. Then he fell asleep listening to her breathing. Old Master Li woke up early in the morning and found that Li Qianxue had woken up very early. She had already come back from her morning jog. Why did you wake up so early today? I slept well, so I woke up earlier. Old Master Li looked at her and observed the look in her eyes. He found that she did look good. What's wrong? What kind of magic potion did Su Qinghui give you yesterday to make you so happy today? Did I? You should go look in the mirror. Seeing that his daughter was about to go upstairs, Old Master Li finally couldn't help but remind her, have you thought it through? No. Then I told him before that I would give him a year. During this year I will do everything I can to torment him. If he can endure my torment, then we'll talk about this a year later. What if he can't stand it? Then forget it. It could only mean that they were not meant to be. That was all. How do you plan to torment him? Old Master Li knew his daughter very well. She was willful and she had a temper. But for so many years, except for when she wanted to be with Su Qinghui, Old Master Li had never seen her willful. You will know later. After saying this, Li Qianxue went upstairs to take a shower and change clothes. Old Master Li was left looking at her back and frowning. What on earth did this daughter want to do? When Su Qinghui got up early in the morning, his phone had already been hung up. He didn't know if it was Li Qianxue who hung up, or if her phone was out of battery. Before he could take care of himself, he received a text from Li Qianxue. Bring me breakfast. Below the text was a list of Hong Kong-style snacks from a 5-star hotel in Lin City. Most importantly, it was on time. If it wasn't delivered within the specified time, he didn't have to go to the Li family. He looked at the text and was confused for a moment. There were 3 chefs in the Li family. There were Chinese and Western dishes, and there were also chefs who knew how to make snacks. Breakfast was a combination of Chinese and Western dishes, with both Chinese and Western dishes. Why did she want him to bring her breakfast? Su Qinghui didn't have time to think about it. He hurriedly took care of himself and went to buy breakfast for Li Qianxue according to the text. Su Qinghui drove very fast, which was not in line with his usual personality. He rushed and finally put breakfast on the Li family's dining table at the last minute of the time set by Li Qianxue. Qianxue? Yes. Li Qianxue looked at the time. It'll be soon. She was very short on time. She didn't expect Su Qinghui to be able to do it. Qianxue? Su Qinghui didn't understand what Li Qianxue wanted to do since yesterday. He rushed in and was a little out of breath. He really couldn't be blamed. Li Qianxue made it clear that she wanted him to buy it and deliver it himself. You haven't eaten, right? Let's eat together. Qianxue? Old Master Li looked at the table of breakfast and was a little confused. Are you talking about this breakfast? Li Qianxue looked at the table, picked up a glass of milk and put it in front of Old Master Li. Uncle Zhang and Aunt Zhang have worked for our family for so many years. They have a lot of things to do in the kitchen, so I gave them a day off today. They don't have to make breakfast. Old Master Li didn't know what to say. No wonder he didn't see Uncle Zhang this morning. Then, are you going to give them a day off? Yes. Li Qianxue nodded and pointed at Su Qinghui. Leave lunch and dinner to him. Qianxue. Old Master Li was speechless. Do you know what you're doing? Of course. Li Qianxue thought that Old Master Li was worried and patted the back of his hand. Don't worry, Su Qinghui's cooking skills are good. If he doesn't do well, you can kick him out. When Jiang Yuyang said that, Li Qianxue seemed to finally see Su Qinghui. Qinghui won't have any objections, right? Of course not. That's good. Li Qianxue looked at him and didn't miss the look in Su Qinghui's eyes. He was eager to show off. She lowered her head and picked up the milk. Well, don't worry, I'll give him time to prove it. After dinner, Li Qianxue stood up. By the way, I'm going to the spa with Mrs. Dong and Mrs. Chiu today. I won't be back for lunch. Remember to cook for Dad. Make sure Dad is satisfied. It should be okay, right? Of course. After getting Su Qinghui's promise, Li Qianxue went out. She was in a good mood. After the spa, she went shopping again. Halfway through shopping, she sent a message to Su Qinghui. On it was a list of dishes, followed by the time and finally, asking Su Qinghui to cook personally. After putting down the phone, Li Qianxue was in a better mood. The smile on her face even made Mrs. Dong and Mrs. Chiu keep asking her if she was in love again. Everyone in Lin City didn't know that she and Su Qinghui had divorced. However, recently Su Qinghui had been pursuing her frequently. Many people thought that it was only a matter of time before Li Qianxue agreed to get back together with Su Qinghui. However, they didn't know that Li Qianxue didn't want to get back together with Su Qinghui now, but she wanted to torture him. Because she found that she couldn't completely forgive Su Qinghui. But she couldn't completely distance herself from Su Qinghui. Since that was the case, she might as well torture him. She had been tormented to the point that she no longer wanted to vent her anger. Torture him until she could completely let go of the past. Before that, she would let Su Qinghui do all the stupid things she had done for him. When Li Qianxue returned home, Su Qinghui's dinner was already ready. The dishes were made according to Li Qianxue's requirements. None of the dishes she ordered were easy to make. The so-called difficulty was not necessarily that the dishes were particularly difficult to make, but that it took a long time. For example, there was a dish that Li Qianxue ordered was braised pork head. This dish wasn't very complicated to make, but it took a long time. And Su Qinghui was alone. Li Qianxue asked the chefs in the kitchen, Uncle Zhang and Mother Zhang, to take a break. Other than leaving 2 people to clean up the room, there was no one in the kitchen to help him. He knew that Li Qianxue did this on purpose. He didn't even know how he had offended her. It didn't seem like she was angry with him because of Su Peixian. Su Qinghui couldn't figure it out, so he simply stopped thinking about it. He looked at the 6 dishes and 1 soup on the table that looked okay, but he didn't know how they tasted. Su Qinghui thought that it was fortunate that there were only the 3 of them eating. Fortunately, Li Qianxue said 6 dishes. If her requirements were higher, he really wouldn't be able to fulfill them. Old Master Li had already eaten Su Qinghui's cooking at noon, so he wasn't surprised. He roughly understood what his daughter wanted to do, so he naturally wouldn't stop her. It was a fact that Su Qinghui needed a lesson. He didn't know how long he could endure it. In the following time, Li Qianxue really began to torture Su Qinghui, just as she had told old Master Li. She would wake up in the middle of the night, say that she had insomnia, and ask Su Qinghui to sing for her. She would say that she was hungry halfway through work, and then ask Su Qinghui to cross more than half of the city to buy her desserts produced by a handicraft workshop. After half a month, Su Qinghui lost a lot of weight at a speed visible to the naked eye. Most importantly, he didn't even know how he had offended Li Qianxue. Standing outside the gate of the Li family, Su Qinghui wasn't in a hurry to enter. Instead he took a breath. Just now, Li Qianxue called before she got off work and asked him to go to the eastern district of Lin City to buy her desserts from a shop in the eastern district. That dessert couldn't be found anywhere else, and the shop owner would start selling only one dessert a day at 5 o'clock in the afternoon. Because it was introduced in the magazine, Li Qianxue saw it and made such a request. Su Qinghui knew that Li Qianxue was angry with him, but no matter how he asked, Li Qianxue would only say no. When he asked too many questions she would ask back, "What's wrong? Didn't you say that as long as I am willing to forgive you, you are willing to do anything? I just asked you to run errands for me and do something within your ability. Are you not happy?" Su Qinghui wasn't unhappy. He was just afraid that Li Qianxue was angry. He had been rushing all the way here. He had tried his best but he still didn't make it. Today was the rush hour and the traffic on the road took longer than usual. When Su Qinghui arrived, it was already past the time that Li Qianxue said. Looking at the last dessert that Su Qinghui had spent so much effort to buy, Su Qinghui clenched his fists. Either way, it's a knife or it's a knife. He hoped that Li Qianxue wouldn't be angry because he was 5 minutes late. "Qianxue." Su Qinghui was about to enter the door when he heard Old Master Li's voice. "Have you had enough fun?" Old Master Li had watched Li Qianxue torment Su Qinghui for the past half a month. At first he thought it was good, but after a few days he couldn't help but lean toward Su Qinghui. Su Qinghui stopped in his tracks. "Dad, what are you talking about? Who's playing?" No matter what, she was his daughter. Even if she became a grandmother, she was still his daughter. "You've been tormenting Su Qinghui every day during this period of time. If that's not playing, then what is it?" "Not really. I just asked him to run errands." "Yes, running errands. Running errands means asking him to run from the West District to buy things. Driving back and forth for more than 2 hours to buy you a dessert that you don't like at all." The Li family had chefs who knew how to cook Western food, so they naturally knew how to make this kind of dessert. Old Master Li didn't believe that Li Qianxue had to eat something sold outside. Seeing that Li Qianxue didn't speak, Old Master Li didn't understand what she was thinking. "Qianxue, what are you thinking? Do you forgive him and want to get back together with him? Or do you not forgive him at all? You still hate him, so you want to torture him?" Su Qinghui, who was about to enter the door, stopped at the door and didn't rush in. "Neither," Li Qianxue denied. She picked up the cherry blossom juice in front of her and took a sip. "Dad, don't worry about me and him. I don't want to care. Don't let him show up in front of me." Old Master Li sighed. "No matter what, you've been in this family for more than 20 years. Don't go too far. If you really forgive him, get back together with him. If you haven't, you might as well not let him appear in front of you again. Isn't that much simpler?" Silence. Li Qianxue didn't speak. She put down the cup in her hand and smiled bitterly. "Dad, do you think I don't want to? Then you..." "Dad, I can't forgive him." Li Qianxue didn't say anything to her children or to Gada, but there was nothing she couldn't say to her father. "I can't forgive him, but I can't let him go either." Li Qianxue's expression was cold, with a hint of pain. "I still have feelings for him. I admit it." She couldn't let go of a man she had loved for more than 20 years. "But I can't forget what he did. In the beginning he swapped the child and made her raise someone else's daughter as her own without her knowing. Now that Su Qingsang didn't pursue this matter, she could let it go. But this wasn't the only problem between her and Su Qinghui. There was also what happened afterward. I thought I could forget the things he said and did to me. But I found that I couldn't. When she was pregnant with Su Qingsang, Su Qinghui didn't care about her. When she was pregnant with Su Yusin, Su Qinghui still didn't care about her. He accused her of using the child to tie him up. He accused her of being a disgusting schemer. And there were many more after that. I really can't forget." "Qianxue?" Old Master Li was stunned for a moment. He always knew that his daughter and Su Qinghui's marriage hadn't been smooth all these years, but he didn't expect that there was still something he didn't know. That day when I woke up from a nightmare, I thought that I had done a lot of stupid things for Su Qinghui. Then I thought about asking him to do all the things I had done. Su Qinghui wasn't the only one who was sacrificing. She had also sacrificed. She had once traveled across half the city just to buy a snack that Su Qinghui liked to eat. She had also learned to wash hands and make soup because of Su Qinghui, but she gave up because she really didn't have the talent. She had once stayed by Su Qinghui's side when he was sick, but after he woke up, he was still indifferent and didn't treat her well. She remembered everything she had done for Su Qinghui when she was young. It wasn't that she had a good memory, but that she had done so much, but she hadn't touched that man in the slightest. I just feel that I can't accept it. Li Qianxue closed her eyes. This was the first time she had said such words to old Master Li. I really just can't accept it. I want him to learn to sacrifice once. Just like those little girls say now, I want to do it once. I want him to know how he used to ignore me. Old Master Li didn't know what he was going to say. Qianxue. He didn't know that his daughter had such thoughts. Dad, do you think that I'm very willful? I don't think so. Old Master Li immediately changed his stance and stood on Li Qianxue's side. My daughter, so what if you're willful? Dad. Li Qianxue smiled. Actually, it's all your fault. You spoiled me. Chapter 756. Old Master Li didn't dare to say that Li Qianxue was wrong. He could probably understand his daughter's thoughts. However, could she really achieve the effect she wanted by tormenting him like this? Or could it really make her understand? What if Su Qinghui was tired and refused to take the bait? Instead, he planned to retreat? If that was the case, what would Li Qianxue do? After all, she and Su Qinghui were not young anymore. Li Qianxue was silent. She looked at her father and shook her head. Dad, if that's the case, it only proves that we are not meant to be together. If they missed each other, so be it. Qianxue? Old Master Li felt a little sorry for his daughter. Li Qianxue felt fine, but there was one more thing she wanted to tell Old Master Li. Right? That Su Qinghui has been in Rong City these days. He wants to reduce Su Peijian's sentence. If there are no accidents, Peijian may come out after a while. This news shocked Old Master Li. He looked at Li Qianxue. You don't want Peijian to come out? No. There was not much difference between 5 years and 2 years. Then, I just feel sorry for Qingsang. Su Peijian had hurt Su Qingsang, but because of the mother-daughter relationship, she had not broken off the relationship with Su Peijian. Now if she reconciled with Su Qinghui, she would have to deal with Su Peijian often. She didn't want to hurt her daughter's heart. Qingsang is a good girl. She won't mind. Old Master Li knew what she was thinking. He also felt guilty about Su Peijian. But this kind of guilt couldn't be greater than the guilt he felt for Su Qingsang. She doesn't mind, but I do. Li Qianxue looked at Old Master Li, not afraid that he would know what she was thinking. Dad, do you know? I thought that some things could be in the past and I also wanted to let go, but I found it really difficult. Midnight dreams, those past, those nightmares. I found that I can't do it. The word forgive was too light, but it was too difficult to do it. She was not a saint. She really couldn't do it. Qianxue. Old Master Li knew what she was thinking, so he didn't say anything else. Su Qinghui stood at the door. The bag of desserts in his hand seemed to weigh 1,000 pounds. He stood at the door for 5 minutes. When there was no sound from inside, he pushed the door open and entered as if nothing had happened. Looking at Li Qianxue, his eyes were still gentle, as if he hadn't heard anything. Li Qianxue was sensitive enough to notice that Su Qinghui had been a little different recently. After talking to Old Master Li that day, Li Qianxue lost interest in tormenting Su Qinghui. Seriously speaking, this person had always been able to endure what others could not. He had always been like this, but Su Qinghui's behavior recently made her feel that she couldn't see through him anymore. What's wrong? Su Qinghui placed the dessert on Li Qianxue's desk. Didn't you say that you liked this dessert? I'll go buy it for you. No need. When Li Qianxue said that she liked him, it was just an excuse. If he really wanted to eat it, wouldn't it be a piece of cake to buy that dim sum shop and turn it into the Li family's territory? I don't feel like eating today. Then what do you want to eat? I'll make it for you. Su Qinghui looked at Li Qianxue, his expression as gentle as ever. Just like how he had been during this period of time. Li Qianxue looked at him and felt inexplicably annoyed. I don't want to eat anything. Su Qinghui, what do you think I am? Su Qinghui paused for a moment. Qianxue, are you angry? I'm not angry. I just don't want to see you. Qianxue? Did I do something wrong? Su Qinghui pursed his lips into a straight line and looked at Li Qianxue very seriously. Li Qianxue became more and more annoyed. The better Su Qinghui did, the more she didn't want to see him. Su Qinghui, don't you have a temper? Seeing Su Qinghui's confused expression, Li Qianxue stood up and pointed at Su Qinghui's chest. Can't you see that I've been tormenting you on purpose these days? Su Qinghui looked at her and heard that she had finally spoken. He shook his head. I know, but I'm very happy that you're willing to torment me. Are you that cheap? Li Qianxue was so angry that she spoke incoherently. Why can't you be like before? Pretend not to see me, ignore me, and no matter what I do or say you pretend not to see me. Su Qinghui, why don't you continue? You know that I'm tormenting you now. To put it bluntly, I'm taking revenge. Why can you still pretend to be indifferent? Don't you have a temper? Where's your backbone? Why aren't you angry? Li Qianxue looked at Su Qinghui with anger on her face. Why don't you have a little backbone? What? Aren't you the most arrogant? Don't you hate me the most? Don't you want to see me the least? Then what are you doing now? Tell me. Su Qinghui looked at Li Qianxue. He suddenly reached out and hugged her in his arms. Li Qianxue was stunned for a moment. Su Qinghui tightened his arms and hugged her very tightly. Qianxue. Su Qinghui, I don't hate you and I don't have any pride in front of you. I won't pretend not to see you. Qianxue, you're the person I love the most in this world. I'll never be able to ignore you. Who would believe him? Li Qianxue didn't believe him. Qianxue. I know it's hard for you to believe me. I also know that you have many concerns and doubts in your heart. It doesn't matter. Whether you want to torment me or torture me, it doesn't matter. This was what he owed her. If you don't believe me, you can continue to doubt me. If you want to test me, you can never forgive me. If you're happy, it doesn't matter if you treat me like this for the rest of your life. But Qianxue, please don't push me away from you. He had made a mistake before. He understood that she didn't believe him. He had once sworn that he would use the rest of his life to make up for it and redeem his mistake. To him, the more Li Qianxue tormented him, the happier he would be. Li Qianxue also suddenly understood this point. Su Qinghui couldn't wait for her to torment him and order him around. The more she tormented him, the more Su Qinghui's guilt would be alleviated. After understanding this, how could Li Qianxue be willing to torment Su Qinghui anymore? Qianxue, I once said that even if you don't forgive me for the rest of your life, it doesn't matter. Because I don't mind. As long as you don't push me away, I'll be very happy. If you don't feel happy, just tell me. I won't do anything. After Su Qinghui finished speaking, he carefully looked at Li Qianxue's eyes. Can't you just give me a chance to stay by your side? Li Qianxue looked at him and wanted to say no, but the voice seemed to be stuck in her throat, and she couldn't say a word. She suddenly pushed him away, then turned around and said coldly, No. Qianxue? If Su Qinghui hadn't heard Li Qianxue's words, he definitely wouldn't have understood the knot in Li Qianxue's heart. He wanted to say a few more words, but Yang Rong came in and looked for Li Qianxue. Presently, this is the company's routine physical examination arrangement for the second half of the year. You just need to sign here. Okay, leave it. Also, this document needs your signature. Okay. There's one more thing. The advertisement for the planning department has already been filmed. Regarding the issue of the release, the two managers of the planning department and the marketing department have different opinions. Pick a time for them to come to my office to talk. Yes. Yang Rong finished talking about all the work and looked at Su Qinghui, who was standing there motionless. A thought flashed through his mind. Could these two people have quarreled again? As soon as Yang Rong left, Su Qinghui was eager to express his feelings. He knew in his heart that it was better to do more than to say more. However, Li Qianxue's heart was strong and she came from a good family. He really didn't feel like he could do much for her. Qianxue, listen to me. Su Qinghui, Li Qianxue interrupted him. You can go back first. Qianxue. You don't have to look for me if you have nothing to do these few days. I want to be alone to calm down. Su Qinghui looked at her. How many days? I don't know. Li Qianxue really didn't know. About Su Peijian, aren't you going to Rong City? You can go. She actually knew that Su Peijian's case seemed to be in court in a few days. She didn't believe that Su Qinghui wouldn't pay attention to it at all and didn't want to see it at all. Qianxue? We'll talk about it after you've dealt with Su Peijian's matter. Her attitude was too firm. Su Qinghui looked at her expression and thought of what she said that day. In the end, he nodded. Li Qianxue put all her attention on work. There were a lot of things to do in the Li Corporation. She forced herself not to think about Su Qinghui for the time being. She needed time to sort things out. However, Su Qinghui would call her every day to tell her where he was and what he was doing. Su Peijian's case was in court today. When Li Qianxue received Su Qinghui's call, she stood at the entrance of the hospital and didn't move. The Li Corporation's employees had very good benefits. Every year they would organize a physical examination for employees. Li Qianxue would also experience it every year, but she had a special private doctor. She really wasn't interested in this kind of routine examination. Listening to Su Qinghui's words on the other end of the phone, he seemed a little nervous. After all, the greater the hope, the greater the disappointment. He was very afraid that even if he worked hard, Su Peijian would still go to prison. That wasn't the outcome he wanted to see. Li Qianxue didn't know how to comfort him. There was always a process for everything. Since I've done my best, then you can rest assured. Okay. Su Qinghui nodded. Qianxue, I miss you so much. Li Qianxue's palm that was holding the phone tightened. She didn't expect that at this time, Su Qinghui would still be in the mood to say that he hated her. When I'm done with these few days, no matter what the outcome is, I'll come back. He said, I want to come back to you. Okay. Compared to his excitement, Li Qianxue was much colder. She looked at the office door in front of her. She wanted to hang up the phone. However, Li Qianxue found that Dr. Zhong, who had been serving the Li family, didn't look too good. Dr. Zhong, what's wrong? Are you not feeling well? No, it's not me. At that moment, Li Qianxue forgot to hang up the phone. Dr. Zhong? Qianxue. Dr. Zhong looked less than 50 years old. Previously, he owed old Master Li a favor and had been the Li family's private doctor. How long has it been since you last had a physical examination? Me? Li Qianxue thought for a moment. Last year I did a close one. There were many things this year, so I didn't have time to do a physical examination. Realizing that Dr. Zhong didn't speak, Li Qianxue couldn't help but feel a little uneasy. What's wrong? Is there something wrong? Qianxue. Dr. Zhong asked Li Qianxue to sit down. He picked up the radiographic films that he had done for her and pointed them at her. You seem to have a tumor here. Li Qianxue blinked. For a moment, she thought that Dr. Zhong was joking with her and lying to her. She didn't believe such words. Dr. Zhong, wait. After all, she had seen a lot of storms. Li Qianxue wasn't scared at first. What tumor are you talking about? Also, where is this? Why don't I understand? This is the location of your stomach. When we gave you a physical examination, we found that there was a fibroid tumor here in your stomach. Preliminary judgment, Dr. Zhong. It wasn't that Li Qianxue didn't trust the doctor, but she trusted herself more. That's impossible. I know my own body. How could I have a stomach problem? Could you have done the wrong test? That's the result of our examination. If you don't believe us, we can't do anything about it. If you don't believe me, you can do another test. Li Qianxue sat there and looked at the extremely professional explanations. In the end, she shook her head. Dr. Zhong, tell me directly what to do next. Do another detailed examination and then determine whether the tumor is benign or malignant. No matter which one it is, we hope that we can get a result. Li Qianxue didn't speak. She sat there, unable to regain her senses. She had always been self-disciplined and had good habits. However, she didn't expect that one day, a disease would happen to her. It was a tumor commonly known as cancer. Dr. Zhong, I understand. Thank you. Li Qianxue stood up. She held the report and thought for a moment. By the way, don't tell my dad about this. Qianxue. Dr. Zhong wanted to say something, but at this time he couldn't say anything. Li Qianxue didn't need him to say anything. She walked straight out. Halfway through, she suddenly remembered that Su Qinghui seemed to have been talking to her. She immediately took out her phone and found that the phone had been hung up. Li Qianxue heaved a sigh of relief. He was busy with Li Qianxue's matter. He shouldn't have heard it, right? He shouldn't have, right? Whether he had or not, Li Qianxue wasn't in the mood to care about Su Qinghui. Holding the examination report, Li Qianxue went home. Old Master Li was surprised that she came back so early today. Li Qianxue said that she stayed up late last night and had a headache today, so she went home to rest. Then you should go up and rest. Everyone knew that Su Peijian would be released from prison today. Naturally, Old Master Li also knew. In Old Master Li's opinion, Li Qianxue's physical discomfort meant that she was still struggling with the previous matter. He wanted to say a few words of advice, but this kind of thing could only be let the person herself get over it. No one else could help. Li Qianxue returned to her room and laid her body on the bed. She looked at the familiar ceiling above her head. She only felt a little warm in her eyes. She didn't expect things to suddenly turn out like this. She wasn't even 50 years old, and her body usually didn't have any reaction. How could she have thought that one day she would have a disease like a tumor on her body? She closed her eyes. Even though Dr. Zhong said that the tumor might be benign, she also felt uncomfortable. No one could really not care about their own life. Their family. Others were like this, and so was she. Tumor? How did she get a tumor out of nowhere? She couldn't figure it out, so she decided not to think about it. Closing her eyes, she thought about a lot. A lot. In modern society, medicine was advanced. Even if she had a tumor, she wouldn't die. But if there really was something, such as spreading or something else, if something happened to her, what would happen to this family? Su Qingseng, Su Yusin, Xiang Nian, and Old Master Li. What would happen to these precious and important family members? How sad would they be if she was gone? Especially Old Master Li, the white-haired person would send off the black-haired person. Li Qianxue forced herself not to think about it, but she couldn't help it. She couldn't help but think of Su Qinghui again. That person had said so many words in the office that day, one sentence after another, and every sentence was very pleasant to the ears. It was good to hear that she almost believed it. But it was only almost. Now that something like this had happened to her, what would Su Qinghui think if he knew? Or if something really happened to her, what would Su Qinghui do? Li Qianxue had never felt like this before. Her consciousness was a little dizzy. Although she was awake, she always felt like she couldn't wake up. In a daze, she closed her eyes to rest. But she always woke up because of the slightest movement. After going back and forth, she opened her eyes again. When she saw the person in front of her, she was stunned. Su Qinghui. She still remembered that she was in a daze before, as if she had been dreaming. In her dreams, Su Qinghui said a lot. Now that she saw him, Li Qianxue didn't know if she was in a dream or reality. Qianxue. Li Qianxue's hand was held tightly by Su Qinghui. He looked at her, his eyes full of pity and a trace of anxiety. Are you okay? I'm fine. What could she do? She tore up the medical report. She didn't want Old Master Li to see it. Now that she saw Su Qinghui, she wanted to pull her hand back, but Su Qinghui held it tightly and refused to let go at all. Qianxue. It's okay. If China can't cure it, we can still go abroad. I believe you will be fine. Li Qianxue looked at him for a long time and finally understood what he meant. You know? Yes. I know. Su Qinghui nodded and didn't hide that he already knew. When I talked to you on the phone, you forgot to hang up. Li Qianxue felt inexplicably guilty. I didn't say it for you to hear. I know. Su Qinghui smiled. But I'm very happy that you let me hear it. Su Qinghui. Li Qianxue pulled her hand back. What do you mean? I'm sick. Let me tell you, who knows how long I can live. If you don't want to be alone again, you'd better stay away from me. Chapter 757. Li Qianxue wasn't very awake. After being kissed by Su Qinghui like this, she woke up even if she didn't want to. The force was very strong and painful. She was a little out of breath. Not only did Su Qinghui kiss her, but he also held her waist tightly and held her in his arms. After the kiss ended, Li Qianxue found that his eyes were actually red. Li Qianxue. Let me tell you, in this life, I won't go anywhere other than by your side. Li Qianxue looked at his red eyes, and the words she was about to say became self-deprecating. Don't think too much. Who knows if I have a next life? It'll be fine. Do you hear me? You'll be fine. He hugged her tightly with almost the strength to rub her into his body. You'll be fine. Even if it's a tumor, with how advanced medicine is now, it will be cured. Don't think too much. You're the one who thinks too much, right? Li Qianxue was a little hurt by his hug. She struggled a little. Let go of me. I can't breathe. No. Su Qinghui rarely showed such a childish side. I won't let go, and I won't let anything happen to you. Qianxue, don't think too much. I believe you'll be fine. You'll definitely be fine. He repeated these words over and over again. It was unknown whether he was convincing Li Qianxue or himself. Su Qinghui let go. She had always been self-disciplined, but she was a little shocked to find that there was something wrong with her body. At this moment, she had already recovered. I know I'll be fine. Let go of me first. Wasn't it just a tumor? She could just have an operation to remove it. Seeing that she didn't have any reaction like this, it probably wasn't serious. Su Qinghui didn't move away. He still held her hand tightly and looked at her as if she would disappear from his eyes in the next second. Qianxue. Let's go to the hospital for another checkup. Check it a few more times. I know an expert in the United States. I'll ask him to come back and operate on you. Su Qinghui. Li Chinchua couldn't stand him like this. Where's Su Peixian? How is she? Su Qinghui was stunned for a moment, then shook his head. I don't know. When Su Qinghui said this, he looked a little embarrassed. I heard that you were sick, so I came back without stopping. Then you? Li Chinchua was stunned. Didn't you come back after the audit? As she spoke, she picked up her phone and looked at the time. She went home from the physical examination to sleep. It had only been 5 hours. Su Qinghui had to rush to the airport from Rong City. Even if he took the fastest plane back, it would still take a long time. It was equivalent to him rushing all the way back without stopping. Li Chinchua looked at him in shock. I'm not in the mood. Su Qinghui had been thinking about Li Chinchua's illness along the way. A tumor could be big or small. If it was not treated well, it could lead to the worst outcome. Su Qinghui couldn't think rationally the whole way. There was only one thought in his mind: nothing could happen to Li Chinchua. Now that Li Chinchua asked about it, he realized that he hadn't even paid attention to the final outcome of Su Peixian's trial. As a father, he had failed in his duty. I'll call and ask now. As Su Qinghui spoke, his phone rang. It was the lawyer he had hired for Su Peixian. Mr. Su, the result of the trial is out. How is it? Su Qinghui only felt a little nervous at this moment. He glanced at Li Chinchua, not sure what the result would be if she knew. The appeal was successful. The previous first trial was rejected. The second trial changed the sentence to 2 years in prison, suspended for 2 years. The lawyer's words made Su Qinghui breathe a sigh of relief. This result was more or less good. Suspended for 2 years. As long as Su Peixian didn't do anything wrong in these 2 years, she would basically be a free person. Good, very good. Thank you. Lawyer Jiang. You're welcome. Lawyer Jiang also breathed a sigh of relief. In fact, this matter was because of Su Qingsang. She knew that Su Qinghui had been running around because of Su Peixian recently, so she didn't want to be nosy. But after all, that person was still her biological father. Especially Su Qinghui's recent performance, it touched her a lot. After thinking about it, she still greeted Hu Jinyao. This result was also the best for her. 2 years in prison. Including the time Su Peixian had served before, she still had 6 months in prison. 2 years of probation and she would be released. If she caused trouble again, she would be locked up again. If she really repented, Su Qinghui could also breathe a sigh of relief. What about Jinren Pei? Miss Su was released after the trial. Now she is home with her mother, Miss Xiang. Su Peixian's second trial was such a big matter, so naturally she had to tell Xiang Kaiping. Even though Xiang Kaiping didn't like Su Qinghui, he could help Su Peixian come back earlier, so Xiang Kaiping felt a little better. Su Qinghui spoke a few more words with lawyer Jiang and finally hung up. Then he called Su Peixian. Su Peixian had just come out and didn't have a phone. Su Qinghui contacted Xiang Kaiping first, so they should be together at this time. Dad. Yes. Peixian. How are you? Not bad. Su Peixian wanted to come out earlier, but she didn't expect it to be so soon. I'm sorry. Peixian, Dad had something to do today, so I couldn't accompany you. Dad, it doesn't matter. I'm already out anyway. Su Peixian didn't care about the process. She could also see that in Su Qinghui's heart, her position had probably fallen again and again. If it was in the past, she would definitely be indignant. But now, after more than a year in prison, she was more open-minded than before. It's good that you're out, it's good that you're out. Su Qinghui's feelings were a little complicated. He thought for a moment and said, I've already asked someone to clean up your house in Lin City. You, Dad. Su Peixian interrupted him. I won't go back to Lin City. Peixian? I still have to take care of my mother. The mother here was naturally referring to Xiang Kaiping. She's old. I don't feel at ease leaving her alone. Su Qinghui didn't know what to say. Su Peixian knew what he was thinking. Dad, don't worry. I won't make the same mistake again. I won't be stupid again. Don't worry. I believe you. I just don't want you to suffer anymore. If you go back to Lin City, I can take care of you. No need. I can take care of myself. Su Peixian looked in Xiang Caiping's direction as she spoke. Dad, don't worry. I'm not the Su Peixian I used to be. Su Qinghui couldn't persuade her. He hung up the phone, unable to hide the sadness on his face. However, the sadness turned into worry when he saw Li Chinchua's face. Are you sure you don't want to go for another checkup? Why don't I arrange for you to go to the big hospitals in Hu City and the capital for another checkup? No need. The medical care in Lin City was considered one of the best. She didn't think there was any possibility of misdiagnosis. Why don't we find an American specialist? Su Peijian doesn't want to go back to Lin City? She changed the topic too quickly. Su Qinghui had to change the topic. Yes, she said she wants to stay in Rong City. Li Qianxue didn't speak. She actually heard Su Qinghui's call just now. She wasn't surprised by Su Peijian's choice. In fact, it was best for her to stay in Rong City. After all, she could start over in Rong City. She came back, it might not be the same. Qianxue, I'm really worried about you. Just listen to me and go for another checkup, okay? We'll see. Li Qianxue definitely had to go for another checkup, but she wasn't in the mood now. She needed some time to think about two possibilities in the future. One was that the tumor was benign and there was nothing wrong with it. The other was that the tumor was malignant. If that was the case, she might have to prepare for some things in advance. Qianxue, what are you thinking about? Su Qinghui had been married to her for many years. He knew what she was thinking when he saw her expression. He held her hand tightly. Don't think about it in that direction. You'll definitely recover. Do you hear me? Compared to his excitement, Li Qianxue was much calmer. Su Qinghui, what if there's something wrong with me? There will be no ifs. There will be no what-ifs. Su Qinghui didn't want to listen to her at all. He kissed her again, fiercely, forcefully, and with a hint of urgency. She couldn't say the rest of the words. She looked at his expression and didn't quite understand. Why was he the one who couldn't accept reality at this time? She let him kiss her. She didn't push him away. She even pandered to him. She didn't want to think of things in a bad direction, but her personality was like this. She always liked to make the best preparations, but she also liked to plan for the worst. Qianxue, her response was almost the best stimulant for him. Su Qinghui almost couldn't control himself. However, thinking of her illness and her physical condition, he forced himself to retract his hand. He propped up a palm and stared at her face. Qianxue, don't say ominous words and don't think in a pessimistic direction. There will be no ifs and there will be no what-ifs. He didn't allow it. Li Qianxue looked into his eyes. Her heart, which had been wavering, suddenly felt a little moved at this moment. She used to hate him. She really hated him. She hated him for being heartless and preparing. Later, she hated him for being hypocritical. She hated him for changing the child and breaking her heart. Later, she didn't hate him anymore, but she couldn't let it go. When she knew that she might die today, the first thought that came to her heart was unwillingness. Unwillingness. She hadn't had enough. She hadn't completely made this man hers yet. What was even more unwillingness was that she found that she still couldn't let it go. She went to sleep as soon as she came back. It might have been because she wanted to escape from reality. She once read an article that said that when people reached middle age, they were most afraid of illness and death. There were old people and young people. She didn't think much of it before. But today he really felt that way. If something happened to her, what would old Master Li do? What about Su Yusen? What about Su Qingsang? How long had it been since she and her daughter met? Were they going to be separated forever? She couldn't accept it. The one who couldn't accept it the most was Su Qinghui. She had just driven him away, but she hadn't let him understand that everything she said that day didn't come from the bottom of her heart. She didn't really want to torture him, and it wasn't that she really didn't love him anymore. It was just that she didn't have the chance to say those words. But he came back. He left his once beloved daughter and came to her side. The moment she saw him, Li Qianxue found that her heart had calmed down a lot. It was just like when old Master Li officially put the burden of the Li family on her shoulders. She had also been nervous and worried for a period of time. She was always afraid that she couldn't do her best. She was always worried that she couldn't be like old Master Li and make everyone believe in her. But Su Qinghui had been by her side during that period of time. Yes, that period of time was one of the few times when they didn't oppose each other. Instead, they united against the outside world. No, it should be said that in terms of business, Su Qinghui's position had always been the same as hers. During that period of time, he had given her the greatest help. It was also because of this that her marriage with Su Qinghui for more than 20 years could continue. Regardless of how they got along in private, in terms of business, Su Qinghui was definitely her strongest supporter and fan. He let her know how capable she was, let her know that one day she could do better than old Master Li. Her heart was more or less at ease. Although it hadn't been put into practice yet, at least it wasn't like when she first received the report. Su Qinghui, anything is possible in this world. Qianxue, you don't listen to me? Li Qianxue insisted. I know that this is just a small surgery. I also know that I might be fine. However, I still have to say that if I have anything, I'll leave the Li Corporation to you. Qianxue. At least, before Yusin can take charge of things on his own, you have to run the Li Corporation well. You have to give a more glorious and powerful Li Corporation to Yusin. Qian Xue. Su Qinghui felt a little sore in his throat, and the tip of his nose was slightly sore. He held her hand and buried his face in her palm. Don't be like this. I can't hear this. Really. You can do it yourself. Promise me. Qian Xue. Su Qinghui looked up at her. Do you know? You're making things difficult for me. Yes. I'm making things difficult for you. Li Qianxue nodded and admitted it openly. But you've made things difficult for me for so many years. I'm just making things difficult for you a little now. It's not too much, is it? Qianxue, you know that the situation is different now. If I lose you, I don't know if I can still live. Even without me, you have to live. Li Qianxue placed her hand on his shoulder. Su Qinghui, even if it's for me, you have to live without me. You have to know that Dad and Yusin both need you. Also, don't you want to compensate Qingsang? You think she's married. Can you forget about her and leave her alone when life is better? Qianxue? Okay. Li Qianxue retracted her hand and looked at him calmly. I'm only talking about one possibility. It doesn't mean that anything will happen to me. In short, I want you to promise me. Su Qinghui calmed down. Okay, I promise you. Let's go. Let's go downstairs for dinner. Li Qianxue looked at the time. If she didn't go downstairs, old Master Li would become suspicious. Qianxue, when do you plan to go for a new physical examination? I'll make another appointment with Dr. Zhong. Li Qianxue still trusted Dr. Zhong. If there were no accidents, she didn't want to change doctors. Okay. Then promise me to find a few more hospitals for a checkup? He was very persistent. Li Qianxue looked at him and finally nodded. Okay. The two of them went downstairs together. When they arrived at the living room, their expressions were calm, and there was no trace of strangeness. Old Master Li wanted to ask Li Qianxue what had happened, but seeing that Su Qinghui was also there, he didn't ask. Instead, Su Qinghui took the initiative to tell Old Master Li that Su Peijian had come out and the verdict. Old Master Li immediately attributed Li Qianshue's reaction to the impact of Su Peijian's incident. That night, Su Qinghui didn't leave the Li family. Instead, he stayed at the Li family. If it were any other time, Li Qianxue would have asked someone to drive Su Qinghui out. However, today was a special day, so she didn't think of driving Su Qinghui out. Li Qianxue took a shower and came out of the bathroom. She saw Su Qinghui sitting on the sofa in the room waiting for her. She didn't look at him and walked to the dresser to do some basic maintenance. At this time, Su Qinghui got up and walked behind her. He placed his hands on her shoulders and used just the right amount of strength to massage her shoulders. Li Qianxue didn't refuse him. She looked at Su Qinghui through the mirror. His usually elegant face still contained concern at this time, and the gaze he looked at her was very complicated. But the easiest thing to see was worry. Li Qianxue, who felt uncomfortable under his gaze, retracted her gaze as she patted on the toner. It's getting late. Aren't you going home? I'm not going back. Su Qinghui lowered his head and smelled the rose fragrance on her body. Qianxue, from now on you can't drive me away. I'll be wherever you are. Li Qianxue frowned slightly and looked at Su Qinghui. Her lips moved, but in the end she pushed him away. Qianxue? Su Qinghui's expression was hurt for a moment. Li Qianxue couldn't stand his gaze. Go take a shower. You're so dirty. This meant that she tacitly agreed to let him stay. Su Qinghui couldn't help but kiss her on the cheek. Okay, I'll go take a shower. Li Qianxue watched as his figure disappeared behind the bathroom. For a moment she didn't know if her behavior was right or wrong. She didn't wait for Su Qinghui. Instead, she took a book and went to bed. She turned on the bedside lamp on her side and opened the book. It was a short story by O. Henry. She had always liked it, but now she couldn't quite get into it. If she let Su Qinghui stay, what would happen next? Su Qinghui soon came out. He just wrapped a bath towel around his waist and came out. Li Qianxue glanced at him from the corner of her eyes and then looked away. She looked as if nothing had happened, but when Su Qinghui sat down beside her, her whole body stiffened. They had been married for more than 20 years, but they had only had skin contact twice. Once before the wedding and once after the wedding. One time there was Su Qingsang and the other time there was Su Yusin. Now, more than a year after their divorce, the couple was lying in the same bed again. Chapter 758. The pages of the book in her hand were slightly twisted by Li Qianshue's grip. Qianxue. Su Qinghui was sitting next to her and happened to see it. He pulled the book out of her hand and put it aside. He wrapped his arms around her waist and buried his face in her neck again. He took a deep breath. Qianxue. Li Qianxue's body was a little stiff. She didn't know where to put her hands and feet. The only two experiences in her memory were not pleasant. She actually had a hidden fear of that kind of thing. Go to sleep. Su Qinghui lay down with her in his arms and turned off the light next to them. He held her slender body in his arms. Li Qianxue was stunned. She wanted to turn around to look at him, but he hugged her even tighter. You're a patient now. Don't worry, I'm not such a beast. Li Qianxue stopped moving. He heaved a sigh of relief. If something really happened between her and Su Qinghui, she wouldn't resist, but she would definitely feel uncomfortable. Qianxue, go to sleep. Su Qinghui's voice rang in her ears. His voice was very pleasant. Li Qianxue did not speak. She tried to close her eyes and sleep, but the chest behind her was too warm. She could not fall asleep. Su Qinghui couldn't fall asleep either. He was holding the woman he loved in his arms. This knowledge was enough to make him restless. Li Qianxue, on the other hand, was nervous. The temperature of the air conditioner was not high, but she still felt hot. Don't move. He felt her body twist in his arms. Su Qinghui, Qianxue, I'm having a hard time holding it in. Don't tease me. Who flirted with you? Li Qianxue wanted to retort, but in the end she couldn't. She adjusted her breathing and tried to cultivate her sleepiness. It was just that he had slept too much in the afternoon, so he really couldn't fall asleep now. She felt Su Qinghui's breath on her neck. Many thoughts flashed through her mind. Qianxue? If she didn't sleep now, he wouldn't be able to sleep either. He tried to turn her body towards him. Su Qinghui. Li Qianxue grabbed his hand and stopped him. Her voice was very soft as she looked at an unknown point in the darkness. You know what? I've wished countless times that one day, you could hug me to sleep like this. Since the day she married him, she had always hoped that they could be like a real married couple. He would kiss her, he would hold her, he would be gentle with her. But she didn't get it. Not even once. But most of the time you sleep by yourself. They were husband and wife, the most intimate people in the world. But every time he went to bed, he would only sleep on one side. Stay away from her. If she tried to approach him, he would not hide the disgust in his eyes. The way he looked at her was always so direct that it hurt her. Again and again. Qianxue? Su Qinghui did not expect her to bring up such a topic at this time. The expression in the darkness was a little strange. You hugged me. Twice. Because the number of times was too few, the impression was too deep. Li Qianxue remembered it very clearly. This time you were sick. When you were sick, you held my hand and kept calling Kaiping, Kaiping. Su Qinghui had no impression of it at all, but since Li Qianxue said so, it meant that it was true. Qianxue, his words were interrupted. The other time was when you were drunk and had Yusin with me. That time you hugged me very hard. It was very tight. At that time their relationship had eased up. She thought that he had finally understood. Li Qianxue couldn't remember anymore. Qianxue. Su Qinghui's throat was a little blocked, but he couldn't even say the word, sorry. When do I think about what I did wrong? Why do you do this to me? You're not wrong. Su Qinghui hugged her very tightly. You're not wrong. I'm the one who's wrong. It had always been him. Su Qinghui, I never thought that it would be so difficult to make you fall in love with me. I never thought about it either. No, it's not difficult. He had fallen in love with her a long time ago. But to him, falling in love with Li Qianxue was equivalent to betrayal. He betrayed Xiang Kaiping and his original intention. He couldn't. I fell in love with you a long time ago. He pressed his chin tightly against her shoulder and smelled the fragrance on her body. The smell on her body made him unable to extricate himself. Qianxue, I love you. A long time ago. There was silence. Li Qianxue felt her eyes slightly dry. At this time, Su Qinghui turned her body to face him. In the darkness, she couldn't see his face clearly. His warm breath assaulted her. His lips fell. Qianxue, I love you. It wasn't difficult to make him fall in love with her at all. It really wasn't difficult. She was so smart and dazzling. When she was by his side, he couldn't see anyone else except for her. It was just his cute pride and pride. Even his inferiority complex made him unable to face his true feelings. I love you. Qianxue. He kissed her lips, her cheeks, and her eyes. The darkness gave him courage and allowed him to forget the past. He couldn't give her much because she had more than him. But he still wanted to give her an experience she had never had before. He could slowly change what he had done wrong in the past in the future. Bit by bit. But now he wanted to eliminate her bad memories. He wanted to use his own actions to let her know that he had changed. Li Qianxue felt that this night was very long and very short. She had never experienced such a feeling before. Her good family background and upbringing made her very restrained in certain aspects. Even if Su Qinghui didn't touch her, she wouldn't think of finding another man. Moreover, the experiences she had in the past weren't good. But what was in front of her was different. In the darkness she merged with him. She felt his gentleness, his care, and of course his love. Li Qianxue opened her eyes and saw Su Qinghui's enlarged face. There was a faint smile in his eyes. She looked a little embarrassed, but it was only a little. At this age she really couldn't put on the shy look of a little girl. Qianxue. Morning. Su Qinghui gave her a good morning kiss. She smelled peppermint. She looked at Su Qinghui. He had already taken care of himself. What time is it? It's still early. If you're tired you can sleep a little longer. Although he was no longer young, it had nothing to do with being in the prime of his life. But in the end he had endured for a long time. Now that he had succeeded he really couldn't stop. Li Qianxue glanced at him and threw the awkwardness caused by the word tired to the back of her mind. Who was the one who said he wasn't a beast yesterday? Su Qinghui was a little embarrassed. He didn't expect things to get out of control. Qianxue, I just couldn't help it. Li Qianxue glanced at him and didn't say anything. Su Qinghui looked embarrassed. It was shameful to say such a thing that slapped oneself in the face. But last night's experience was too wonderful. If he was embarrassed then so be it. Qianxue, how are you? Does it hurt anywhere? Do you want to take a hot bath? Shut up. Li Qianxue couldn't help but glare at him. How could he have the cheek to ask? The word pain reminded her of last night. Almost every step he took he would ask, does it hurt? If it doesn't hurt then what about this? In the end he didn't ask if it hurt, but instead asked if it was comfortable. How about this? Her face turned red from the question. She was so embarrassed that she was too embarrassed to answer. He just had to keep asking. It was really enough. She got out of bed and went straight to the bathroom. She wasn't wearing any clothes. The marks on her body fell into Su Qinghui's eyes without reservation. He suddenly realized that he seemed to want it again. He followed behind Li Qianxue. After Li Qianxue entered the door, she glanced at him. Qianxue. Although he really wanted to and hoped to do it a few more times, it was definitely not a good time. Are you really okay? How about, Su Qinghui, get out. I want to go to the bathroom now. Do you want to be here too? Li Qianxue said quickly and directly. Su Qinghui was embarrassed and quickly left. After waiting for nearly an hour, Li Qianxue finally came out of the bathroom. It was so long that Su Qinghui almost wanted to rush in. Qianxue? Li Qianxue didn't look at him, but she actually felt a little awkward. Seriously speaking, this kind of thing, one was willing to do it and the other was willing to take it. There was nothing to say. It was just that two divorced men and women were together again after being divorced for so long. This realization made her a little embarrassed. Qianxue, I've made an appointment with Dr. Smith in the United States. He's an authority in this area. He's not free this week. He won't be free until next week. I've already asked him to come to China as soon as possible. If you want, we can go directly to the United States now. No need. There's no hurry. Whether it was to give herself a new physical examination, or if the results were not satisfactory. Whether it was to arrange the surgery, Li Qianxue had to arrange the company's matters first. Qianxue, you're not in a hurry, but I'm in a hurry. When Su Qinghui thought of her body, he couldn't calm down. This illness can be serious or minor. Qianxue, don't be willful. Come with me for a checkup, okay? Just take it as letting me rest assured? Rest assured? How can I rest assured? What if it's malignant? Even if it's malignant, you still have me. Su Qinghui was very persistent. Qianxue, just listen to me once, okay? We'll talk about it later. Qianxue, you have to let me arrange the company's matters, right? Okay. This was fine. Su Qinghui nodded. I'll accompany you to work these few days. Okay. Li Qianxue didn't object. She believed that it was useless for her to object now. Also, Su Qinghui looked at Li Qianxue. If it's really a bad result, let's go to Switzerland. Li Qianxue stopped in her tracks. She looked at Su Qinghui in confusion. I remember you once said that you wanted to go skiing in Switzerland. Li Qianxue looked at him and was stunned for a moment. Go to Switzerland? It wasn't that she hadn't been there before. In fact, she had been to some European countries and some American countries. At that time, she said that she was going to Switzerland because she wanted to go out with Su Qinghui. At that time they were investing in a project. That company had a very large indoor ski resort under its name. Li Qianxue and Su Qinghui happened to be free that day, so they went to investigate together. Li Qianxue naturally knew how to ski. When the person in charge of the other party asked her if she wanted to give it a try, she looked at Su Qinghui with anticipation. However, Su Qinghui didn't look at her at that time, nor did he respond. Therefore Li Qianxue could only politely refuse. If you want to ski, you should go to Switzerland. It's more fun there. Later, when she went to Europe with Su Peijian and Su Yusin, they stayed in Switzerland for a few days. She didn't expect that Su Qinghui would remember what she had said so clearly from so long ago. This surprised her a little. Thinking of what he said last night, that he had fallen in love with her a long time ago, she turned around again. We'll talk about it later. Qianxue, don't overcomplicate things and don't think too badly of things. Trust me? I'm not thinking about anything right now. Li Qianxue said this and continued to walk outside. However, after taking 2 steps, she stopped again and turned to look at Su Qinghui. Speaking of which, I'm really thinking about something. What? I didn't use protection last night. I shouldn't be pregnant, right? It wasn't that Li Qianxue was scaring herself. Ever since the second child policy was relaxed, there were many people older than her who got pregnant and gave birth. Moreover, with her current age, it was really possible. As soon as this was said, Su Qinghui's expression immediately changed. I don't think so, right? He wasn't sure himself. In fact, the only 2 times he had sex with Li Qianxue had gotten pregnant both times. The only time he had sex with Xiang Kaiping was also pregnant. This, Qianxue, don't scare me. Seeing that he had successfully diverted his attention, Li Qianxue couldn't help but smile. Her footsteps downstairs were much lighter. Forget it, she wouldn't tell him that yesterday was her safe period. However, she was really a little worried about the pregnancy. Although she wasn't young anymore. But it was better to be careful about this kind of thing. When they went downstairs, old Master Li saw Su Qinghui. He was only surprised for a moment. He quickly accepted it. On the other hand, Li Qianxue began to give old Master Li a heads up. Dad, in a few days I might have to go on a long trip. Where are you going? To Switzerland. Why are you going to Switzerland? After one night, Li Qianxue had already thought of all the results. It was the same now. I'm going to Switzerland for a vacation with Qinghui. A vacation? Old Master Li looked at Su Qinghui and then at Li Qianxue. Why did you suddenly think of going on a vacation? Those who didn't know better would think that they were on a honeymoon. Dad, you know that I plan to give Qinghui a chance. Since this is the case, we naturally have to get along more. Go out with him and go on a trip. We can get along seriously, and we can also look at each other's shortcomings and personality that are not suitable for us. If it's really not suitable, it's better to make plans early. What do you think? Li Qianxue was purely talking nonsense. She and Su Qinghui had been husband and wife for more than 20 years. What shortcomings, what personality not suitable? Did they still need to get along? However, old Master Li believed it. Not only did he believe it, but he also nodded very cautiously. Yes. Since you have plans to get back together, think about it carefully. It's fine if you make a mistake once, but don't make it a second time. Dad, don't worry. Li Qianxue glanced at Su Qinghui as she spoke. Su Qinghui had long known that Li Qianxue would definitely find a way to make old Master Li feel at ease, but he didn't expect that she would find such an excuse. Qinghui. Old Master Li suddenly spoke and looked at Su Qinghui with a serious face. I handed my precious daughter over to you in the past, but you didn't live up to my trust. You hurt her and hurt me. Now, I hand my daughter over to you again. Don't let me down. Dad, don't worry. I won't. Okay. I'll believe you again. Dad, what are you talking about? Li Qianxue couldn't take it anymore. I just planned to give him a chance, but I didn't say that I would definitely choose him. In my opinion, it's the same thing. In old Master Li's mind, he had already decided to go on a honeymoon, so it was probably the right thing to do. What else was there to ask? Li Qianxue's lips moved, but in the end she gave up competing with old Master Li. There were some things that he would believe if he believed it and forget it if he didn't. After dinner the two of them went out together. On the way, Su Qinghui bought a morning after pill for Li Qianxue. Qianxue, I promise that this is the last time. I will never give you a chance to take this pill again. Su Qinghui thought for a long time. In the past he had never been close to women, so it didn't matter. Perhaps in a few days he could go for a vasectomy? That was a good idea. Li Qianxue didn't know what he was thinking. She used 3 days to deal with most of the work. She had already told him what she needed to tell him. Su Qinghui was confirming with Dr. Smith that he would come to China to help Li Qianxue with the surgery. However, Li Qianxue suddenly changed her mind. Tell Dr. Smith not to come. Let's go to Switzerland first. After we go to Switzerland, we'll go directly to the United States. She had never traveled with Su Qinghui before, but she really wanted to try it once. She wanted to see what it felt like. Qianxue? Su Qinghui didn't quite understand what she meant. Lin City is not small, but it's not big either. If I have a checkup or surgery in Lin City, it's hard to guarantee that my father won't know about it. In that case, why don't I go abroad? If there's really anything, I can just solve it outside. Okay. She had already decided, so Su Qinghui decided to listen to her. Before we leave, I'll first convince my father to agree to go to his friend for a vacation, or go directly to Rong City to find Su Qingsang. Old Master Li and Old Master Huo were also on good terms. The two old men would have company when they were together. I'll listen to you. Su Qinghui had no objections. After hearing Li Qianxue's words, Old Master Li thought about it and decided to go to Rong City to visit and miss Nianji. Li Qianxue moved quickly. She sent Old Master Li onto the plane and then got on the plane herself. Before leaving, she didn't forget to call Su Qingsang and ask her to take care of Old Master Li. After getting Su Qingsang's promise, Li Qianxue turned to look at Su Qinghui. Let's go. Okay. They had packed their things yesterday and they were just preparing to leave. Xiao Xia and Uncle Zhang went upstairs and carried their luggage downstairs. Li Qianxue glanced at her room. There was an obvious reluctance in her eyes, but she quickly followed them out. Chapter 759. Li Qianxue liked Switzerland very much. It wasn't big, but the scenery was beautiful. She had been here twice before and each time she had brought the children with her. This was the first time she had come with Su Qinghui. She sat in the helicopter and looked at the Matterhorn in front of her, as well as the igloo not far from the mountainside. She turned around and glanced at Su Qinghui. The last time I came here with Yusin and the others, I stayed here. Her voice was indifferent. When I came out at that time, I felt that you were the only one missing. I didn't expect that now that I'm out with you, the children will be busy with their own things. Su Qingsang married to Rong City, and Su Yusin was studying in the capital. Li Qianxue, who didn't have her two children by her side, was actually lonely. If you like it, call the children over after a while. The helicopter was about to land, and the sound was very loud. Su Qinghui almost roared when he said this. Li Qianxue didn't say much. Come with the children? If there was a chance she could. The two of them got off the helicopter. Someone was waiting at the main entrance and led them to the room inside. Li Qianxue had stayed here before. When she entered the room, she could see Su Qinghui followed her to the main entrance of the igloo. There were 6 rooms here. In order to make Li Qianxue comfortable, Su Qinghui had already booked the place in advance. It's just the two of us here for the next few days. Seeing Li Qianxue standing on the sun deck in front of him, Su Qinghui went forward and put his arm around her waist. Let's go skiing tomorrow. Let's rest today. The spa downstairs is very relaxing. You've been on the plane for so long. Go enjoy it later. Li Qianxue didn't object. She wasn't tired. It wasn't her first time here. From the sun deck, the view of the Matterhorn was spectacular. Behind her was Su Qinghui's chest. His arms were around her waist and she leaned her weight on him. When they arrived, it was the afternoon of the local time. The setting sun shone on the snowy peak, and the entire snowy mountain was dyed with a layer of gold. It was very beautiful. Qianxue, if you like it here, we can stay here for a few more days. After that, we can go to other cities in Europe to play. It depends on where you want to go. No need. Li Qianxue looked at the snow mountain not far away. Let's stay here. We don't need to run around anymore. All right, I'll listen to you. Su Qinghui tightened his arms and hid the worry in his eyes. No matter what you want to do or where you want to go, I'll be with you. Li Qianxue glanced at him but didn't say anything. She suddenly remembered something. Young husband and wife, old companions. Thinking about it carefully, this sentence was actually very reasonable. Parents will grow old. Children will grow up and leave you. Only husband and wife could accompany each other to old age. She had never thought that Su Qinghui would be by her side at this time. I'm tired, I'm going to sleep for a while. All right, I'll accompany you. Don't sleep for too long. We'll wake up later for dinner. Although you've been here before, I heard that the cheese hot pot here is pretty good. Let's eat that tonight. Yes. Li Qianxue didn't object. She slept on the bed and felt Su Chenghui carefully lying down beside her and holding her waist carefully. In the end, he closed his eyes and didn't think about anything. Just like that, he let himself fall asleep. When Li Qianxue woke up, it was already dark. Su Chenghui sat on the sofa by the window. No one knew what he was thinking. Hearing the sound of her waking up, he quickly got up and walked over. "You're awake? Are you still tired? Are you hungry? Get up and have dinner." "Okay." Li Qianxue slept for a while and felt much better. The restaurant was on the first floor. It was already dark outside. Only the faint shadow of the snow-capped mountains could be seen. However, the stars in the sky were very beautiful. After dinner, the two of them went for a walk in the courtyard outside. It was still too cold in this season. A thick coat was enough. Li Qianxue's hand was a little cold. Su Chenghui held her hand tightly. The igloo was very quiet. In such a snow-capped mountain, only the footsteps of two people could be heard. There were sofas and wooden rocking chairs in the courtyard. The two of them walked for a while, stopped and sat down on the rocking chairs. Looking up, the sky was full of stars. It was very bright. Such a place away from the hustle and bustle and away from pollution. Everything was quiet and beautiful. At that moment, Li Qianxue forgot about her illness and everything that she had shared with Su Chenghui. There was only the present. The mountain wind blew, bringing with it a little coolness. Li Qianxue's body trembled slightly. At this moment, Su Chenghui hugged her body into his arms and wrapped her in his coat. Li Qianxue didn't feel cold anymore. Not only was she not cold, but she also felt a little hot when he hugged her. However, Li Qianxue didn't move. She didn't push him away, nor did she make a sound. She just looked up at the stars in the sky. She thought to herself, it's good to be like this. She wasn't the only one who felt good. Su Chenghui also felt good. For a moment he hoped that time would stop. "Qianxue." "Yes. If you're fine this time, let's get married again when we go back." After a moment of silence, Li Qianxue turned to look at him and said softly, "You seem to have forgotten something." "What?" "Our 1-year period hasn't arrived yet." "Qianxue?" And Li Qianxue turned her face away to look at the stars again. "I didn't agree to get back together with you before. I just said that if you perform well this year I can give you a chance." "Qianxue, I regret it." Su Chenghui turned her face and looked at her expression very seriously. "I regret it." "You mean you want to go back on your word?" "Yes. For you there's no harm in going back on my word." Su Chenghui's gaze was firm. He changed from hugging her to hugging her and put her on his lap. He let her sit on him. Li Qianxue let out a low cry. Although there was no one around and the waiters were all inside, she was still embarrassed. "Qianxue, let me tell you. I do regret it. I regret a lot of things one by one. I can't even list them all. But I realize that I can't play by the rules of your game." "What do you mean?" "If I play by the rules of your game, I don't know when you'll forgive me and give me a chance. Even if you don't give me a chance, I want to tell you now. I'm worried about you. I can't let you go alone." "I'm not alone." Li Qianxue was hugged very tightly by him. Helpless, she could only put her hands on his chest. "I still have Yusin, I still have Qingseng, and I still have Dad. Dad is already old." Su Chenghui didn't stand on ceremony. "Qingseng is married to Rong City. She video calls you every day, but can she hug you like I do and give you warmth? And Yusin, in 2 years he will get married and have children. How will he still remember you? You rascal." "I'm a rascal. What's wrong?" Su Chenghui kissed her forehead. "I'm only a rascal to you." Whether it was in the past or now, she was the only one who could make him so. Li Qianxue. Li Qianxue looked at Su Chenghui's eyes. In the night they looked especially bright. He slowly approached and finally kissed her lips. The next week was a very novel experience for Li Qianxue. During the day she followed Su Chenghui and the other two. Other than taking a helicopter to visit the snow mountain, she also took a carriage to visit the town at the foot of the mountain. She also played all the activities that she could play here: skiing, sledding, snowshoes and hiking. In the evening they enjoyed a romantic candlelight dinner and danced together to the melodious music. At night she was gently embraced by Su Chenghui. She got to know her body again. He arranged everything very well. This was a different experience from children coming out. She felt as if she was 20 years younger, full of energy and vitality. She didn't even realize that there was a lot more smile on her face, and her eyes were much brighter. Love let her become younger. The appearance of Asians was very deceiving. The staff at the igloo only thought that they were newlyweds who came here for their honeymoon. When she was asked by the staff for the first time, she still wanted to explain. She was already a grandmother. But later on she felt that this was also very good. Because of Su Qinghui she also became young. No matter how happy the journey, in the end they had to get married. A week later, after contacting Dr. Smith in the United States, Su Qinghui and Li Qianxue went to the United States together. Dr. Smith was an expert in gastroenterology. When he came to China he met Su Qinghui by chance and owed him a favor. After asking about Li Qianxue's situation, he looked at her medical report and suggested that she do a comprehensive examination first. Su Qinghui's expression had been very solemn almost from the moment he entered the hospital. He had been worried, and this heart couldn't be put to rest no matter how hard he tried. As for Li Qianxue, he didn't know if she had gone out for a few days to relax. She looked much more relaxed than Su Qinghui. Before the examination, Li Qianxue looked at Su Qinghui. "Don't look like that. If you look like this, I'll think that I won't live to see tomorrow." "Don't talk nonsense." Su Qinghui's expression became even uglier. "Don't make such a joke." She could afford it, but he couldn't. "Relax, life and death are up to fate." "How big is it?" "Li Qianxue." Su Qinghui couldn't take it anymore and called her full name. Li Qianxue smiled. For the first time, she took the initiative to put her arms around Su Qinghui's waist and looked up at him. "Do you know? I'm not afraid of anything now. Qianxue? I have everything I want." Li Qianxue wasn't comforting him. She was serious. "Yusin has grown up and Qing Sang is married and happy. As for my father, I believe there's nothing he can't understand. And you, my biggest obsession in the first half of my life was to want your love. Now I have it too. To me there's nothing that I regret and there's nothing that I pity. So, Li Qianxue, don't say any more." Su Qinghui hugged her tightly and didn't let her break free. He kissed the top of her head. He couldn't stand her calm appearance. "You've had enough, but I haven't. You don't think it's a pity, but I do. I also have regrets and I have obsessions. Qianxue, I know that at this point you don't care about anything and don't care about anything. I can't. So, don't say such things in front of me." He couldn't stand it even if he knew that nothing would happen to her. But just hearing her say it like this, he couldn't accept it. "Qianxue, don't ever say such words again." Li Qianxue was a little out of breath from Su Qinghui's hug. After thinking about it, she gently patted his back. "All right, let go." "I don't want to let go." Su Qinghui was really afraid. "I'll go check." "Qianxue?" Li Qianxue retreated from his arms and looked at him with an indifferent expression. "All right, didn't you say that I'll be fine? Since that's the case, then let me check." "Okay. You'll definitely be fine." "Definitely." Su Qinghui nodded heavily. Li Qianxue smiled, walked past him and followed the nurse to do the check. Time passed very slowly, but it also seemed to pass very quickly. More than half a day was enough for Li Qianxue to finish all the items that needed to be done. The results wouldn't come out so soon. It would be in the afternoon. Su Qinghui and Li Qianxue went to a Michelin restaurant near the hospital for dinner. The dishes prepared by the restaurant were delicious, but Su Qinghui didn't have much of a taste. It was fine when he was playing in Switzerland, but in his current state he actually couldn't eat. "Don't be like this, okay?" Li Qianxue put down the knife and fork in her hand and looked at him helplessly. "You've already affected my appetite." "Qianxue?" "Su Qinghui, everything has happened. It's already happened. It didn't happen, so it's useless for you to worry. The results of the test will only come out in the afternoon. Let's say that I have a terminal illness and can't be cured. Then I have to live every day as if it's my last, don't you think so?" "You're right, but I'm still very worried." "If you're really worried, then have a good meal with me." Li Qianxue picked up the champagne in front of her and gently raised it to him. "You won't make me lose my appetite, right?" Su Qinghui looked at her. He had never seen Li Qianxue like this before. That was true. As the leader of the Li family, what kind of storms had she not seen? How could she lose her composure because of a small tumor? However, the calmer she was, the more uncomfortable he felt. "You're quite carefree. Unfortunately, I'll never be able to be carefree because of what happened to you." However, Li Qianxue's words more or less comforted him. He really couldn't be anxious. No matter what the outcome was, he had to face it. Li Qianxue was in a good mood. After eating, she strolled around the neighborhood. The hospital was in the center of New York. She had been to New York many times. However, she had never come with Su Qinghui. She was shopping with great interest and was even in the mood to pick out gifts for Su Yusin and Su Qingsang. "Look, this is not bad. Qingsang should like it. This toy is also good. I can give it to Xiang Xiangyan. This can be given to Yusin. And this? In less than 2 hours, Su Qinghui's hands were full of things. Fortunately, he had arranged for people to come this time. He asked someone to send the things back to the hotel. Seeing that it was almost time, he went back to the hospital with Li Qianxue. Smith was waiting for them, holding the results of the examination in his hand. When he saw Su Qinghui, his expression was a little ugly. This expression made Su Qinghui feel that something was wrong, and he couldn't help but feel nervous. "Smith, how is it? Is the result bad?" "Yes, very bad." Li Qianxue was already prepared when she came, but when she heard Smith's words, she was still stunned. Sure enough, was her luck a little bad? "Smith, even you can't do it?" Su Qinghui was anxious. "You are an authority in this field." "Wait, what do you mean?" "I mean, no matter what kind of malignant tumor it is, you have already handled countless cases. There shouldn't be anything that can stop you, right?" No, you're wrong." Smith was a little old man in his 50s this year. He waved his hand and said with a serious expression, "Dear Su, I have to tell you that there is no end to the medical field. I can't say that just because I have handled a lot of cases, I am invincible. It doesn't exist." "But, Dr. Smith." The first to calm down was Li Qianxue. "How bad is the situation that you said just now? How much time do I have?" Knowing the result, she was not nervous anymore. Everything was up to fate. She was already prepared for any situation. "Time?" Smith frowned, not quite understanding what she meant. "Qianxue." Su Qinghui looked at her in fear. Finally, he looked at Smith with a pleading expression. "Smith, no matter what price I have to pay, I want her to live. Please." "Wait a minute." Smith raised his hand again. "Did you guys misunderstand something?" The two of them looked at each other and at Smith together. "Misunderstanding? Dr. Smith, you just said that the situation is very bad." "It's very bad, very bad." Smith glanced at Su Qinghui. "I don't understand how the hospital where you come from examines people. But my results show that there is nothing wrong with your wife at all." For a full 10 seconds, Su Qinghui and Li Qianxue did not understand what Smith meant. What did you say?" "I said that your hospital misdiagnosed. Isn't that very bad, Dr. Smith?" When the great surprise came, Li Qianxue couldn't believe it. "You mean I'm not sick?" "Of course." Smith looked Li Qianxue up and down and said, "To be honest, I rarely see someone as young and healthy as you at your age. You are in good health. There is no problem at all." "Dr. Smith, you are not lying to me, are you?" Su Qinghui could not believe it. He could not believe that things would turn out like this. "Don't scare me again." His mood was as tense as a roller coaster, going up and down for a while. He really couldn't take it anymore. The same thing had to happen again. "Su, since you came to me, you should know my professionalism. I would never joke about such things." "Yes, I know." Su Qinghui was stunned by the huge surprise. He could hardly believe it. He asked several times in a row. After getting confirmation again and again, he could no longer restrain himself. He turned around and hugged Li Qianxue. Qianxue, did you hear that? You are fine. You are healthy. This is great. This is really great." Li Qianxue was hugged so tightly that she could hardly breathe. However, she had no intention of pushing Su Qinghui away at all. In fact, she was also very happy. She was not afraid of death, but wouldn't it be better if she could live? "All right. I think you don't need me anymore." "Thank you, Smith." Su Qinghui came back to his senses. He smiled and pulled Li Qianxue's body up. He thanked Dr. Smith. "Thank you, Dr. Smith." Li Qianxue also smiled. "Don't thank me." Smith handed them the examination report in his hand. "Congratulations, you are very healthy. However, I still have to say that if possible, you should go to the hospital that did the examination for you. They actually said that you have a tumor. This is too strange." "Okay. I will." The two of them thanked Smith. They left the hospital with the examination report. After leaving the hospital, Su Qinghui hugged Li Qianxue tightly in his arms. "Qianxue, it's great that you are fine." "It's great." "Yes." Li Qianxue smiled. She was a little out of breath from his hug. She couldn't help but pat his back. "That's enough. We are outside. It's okay." Su Qinghui let go of her hand and took her hand instead. "No one here knows us anyway." Su Qinghui was really too happy. During this period of time, he had never let go of his worry. Even though he knew that modern medicine was very advanced, he couldn't afford any accidents. Now that Li Qianxue was fine, this was definitely great news for him. "Let's go. Let's go and celebrate." Li Qianxue didn't object. It wasn't like she had survived a disaster. Although it was a mistake and a misunderstanding. However, in less than half a month after experiencing several ups and downs in her emotions, she also had a new understanding of things. Life was short. No one knew which would come first, tomorrow or an accident. Don't ask about the past, don't be afraid of the future. Cherish every day in front of you. Su Qinghui held her hand tightly, and the corners of her lips curled up slightly. She revealed an extremely elegant smile. This was also very good. In New York. The observation deck on the 102nd floor of the Empire State Building. Li Qianxue had been brought here by Su Qinghui and said that she wanted to watch the sunset. There was a time limit for opening here every day. He said that he was afraid that if he came late, he wouldn't be able to see it. Li Qianxue had actually been here and seen it. But she didn't want to spoil Su Qinghui's mood. In fact, she didn't know that Su Qinghui had also been here and seen it. This time he came just to give her a surprise. The Empire State Building was a landmark building in New York. As the world's famous observation deck, there would be many tourists here every day. However, Li Qianxue found that there seemed to be a little more Asians here today. She saw many Asians with yellow skin and black hair. Qianxue. There was still some time before the sun set. Su Qinghui took Li Qianxue for a 360-degree walk around the observation deck. Central Park, the Hudson River, the East River, the Brooklyn Bridge, Times Square, and the Statue of Liberty. In their eyes it became small. Li Qianxue was in a good mood. Yesterday she called Old Master Li and told him that she would be going back in a few days. Her tone sounded very happy. Old Master Li naturally heard it too. He knew that Su Qinghui and Li Qianxue had made up their minds to be together this time. He didn't object and he had no way to object. After going around in circles for so long, he didn't expect the two of them to be together again. Qianxue. The sun was about to set, and the observation deck was illuminated in a golden color. Yes. Li Qianxue was stunned for a moment and turned to look at him. What's wrong? Su Qinghui was a little nervous. Wait a minute, I'll go to the bathroom. Don't run. I'll be right back. Okay. Li Qianxue nodded. After Su Qinghui left, she turned around and stood at the railing. Soon, footsteps sounded behind her again. There were a lot of people today. Just as she was about to stand inside, she heard the wedding march. Where did the music come from? Li Qianxue couldn't help but turn around. She found that Su Qinghui was standing behind her, holding a large bouquet of roses in his hand. Qianxue. Su Qinghui walked in front of her and knelt down on one knee. He raised the roses in his hand in front of her. Qianxue, I've made a lot of mistakes and wasted a lot of time. I've taken a lot of detours and I've lost my heart. But I've always been very glad that no matter how much I've gone through and how much I've wasted, you're still here. By my side. I know that I'm not a perfect husband. I also know that I might not be that important in your heart. But Qianxue, I still have to say it. I love you. Please give me a chance to take care of you and accompany you for the rest of my life. Qianxue, please marry me. Li Qianxue was stunned. Su Qinghui's proposal was in Chinese. However, everyone knew what he meant by this action. In just a short while, many people had gathered around them. Marry me. Li Qianxue didn't expect Su Qinghui to give her such a surprise. She was very surprised and even stunned for a moment. Su Qinghui. Not only did Su Qinghui have roses on his hand, but there was also a ring under the roses. He placed the ring on top of the roses. Qianxue, give me a chance. Let me take care of you. Please marry me. The Asian faces that she had seen before were all shouting in Chinese. Marry him, marry him. Marry him. Marry him. The voices were louder and louder. Many foreigners came over and applauded together. Qianxue. Please marry me. Marry him. Marry him. The voices kept ringing out. Li Qianxue looked at Su Qinghui. Finally she nodded. She forced him to get married the first time, and this time Su Qinghui proposed to her. She didn't know what would happen in the future, but she believed that no matter what, as long as he was by her side, he would make her calm and indifferent. I promise you. Qianxue. Su Qinghui almost jumped up. He placed the rose on Li Qianxue's hand and put the ring on her. From today onwards, I will never let you go alone again. Okay. She was willing to try to believe in him and his promise. She believed that they would be happy. Qianxue. I love you. Yes. Li Qianxue didn't give him a response. She had done a lot and expressed a lot. Now it was Su Qinghui's turn. Perhaps one day in the future she would be willing to say that she loved him again. As for before that, it would depend on his performance. This could be considered a little willful on her part. Chapter 760. Li Junxing looked at the marks on the bed for a long time. Finally, he rubbed the space between his eyebrows and took out his phone to call Secretary Chen. Half an hour later, Li Junxing, who had taken a shower and cleaned himself up, saw Secretary Chen, who had brought him clothes. Secretary Chen looked at the marks on the bed and quickly retracted his gaze. He only stared at Li Junxing's face. "Mayor Li, go check the surveillance footage now and find that woman." 30 minutes was enough for Li Junxing to think clearly. Last night was a trap. Yesterday, after his social engagement, he drank a little more and there was a room upstairs. Secretary Chen happened to be busy yesterday, and he had been thinking too much. He thought that since this was a property under his childhood friend's name, no one would play tricks here. Unexpectedly, when he returned to his room, there was a woman waiting for him on the bed. If Li Junxing had only drunk wine, he definitely wouldn't have fallen for the other party's trick. However, the wine yesterday was probably not an ordinary wine. There must have been something added to it. That woman didn't appear and didn't immediately extort him now, which meant that the other party must have a backup plan. Perhaps it was to take a video or a photo. No matter which one it was, he was careless this time. "Mayor Li, who do you think did it?" Secretary Chen's expression wasn't very good. This problem could be big or small. If the opponent caught hold of it, who did it? The reform plan he proposed this time affected the interests of many people. It was normal for these people to want to deal with him. Putting aside the reform plan this time, his position was about to be changed. It could also be the work of a competitor. No matter who it is, pay close attention during this period of time. Whether it's the news or anything else, keep an eye on it. If someone really didn't have eyes and used the video or photos taken yesterday to threaten him, he didn't mind letting those people know the consequences of provoking him. Soon, Secretary Chen returned. His expression was a little ugly. "Mayor Li, the surveillance cameras didn't capture it." "What did you say?" Li Junxing's gaze suddenly turned cold. "You didn't capture it?" Secretary Chen couldn't even raise his head as he showed the video he copied to Li Junxing. In the surveillance footage, a woman could indeed be seen walking out of this room this morning. However, the other party's head was covered and he wore a pair of large sunglasses on his face, so his facial features could not be seen clearly. One could only tell from her appearance that the other party had a good figure and was slim and graceful. She was a woman. "What about last night?" Secretary Chen showed him the video from last night. For some reason, the electricity had been cut off for a while. The entire corridor was pitch black. In the darkness, only 3 figures could be seen entering the room. From the back view of the 3 figures, it looked like 2 people were carrying each other into his room. However, all of them only had their backs and not their faces. Those people had entered the room before him, and he had entered the room after the 3 of them had gotten drunk. At first, the 3 of them entered the room together and then they came out together. Due to the power outage in the corridor, the silhouette of the person was still unclear. What about the surveillance cameras in the elevator? The surveillance system in the elevator was accidentally broken yesterday. Broken? What a coincidence. Li Junxing's expression was solemn. He was even more certain that the other party had come prepared. Secretary Chen passed this video to Delu. "Tell him to investigate all the women who entered the hotel yesterday. Especially these few people who are under investigation." Although it was pitch black, the characteristics of the figure and the way they walked could still be found by experienced people. Yes. The person whom Li Junxing had sent people to look for was hiding in the same room downstairs. She came out of the bathroom and put on the clothes she had asked someone to buy. "Thank you, Ling Xian." Yi Zhen buttoned the last button and came out of the bathroom. When she faced Ling Xian, who was sitting on the bed, her face was filled with gratitude. "Yes. Why are you being so polite with me?" Ling Xian brushed her bangs away from her forehead and looked at Yi Zhen with a hint of mockery. "Your stepsister is really amazing. She should have found you a top hooker in Qing City. Seriously speaking, she treats you well." As she spoke, she glanced at Yi Zhen's face. When she came to deliver the clothes just now, the marks on her body. TSK, really? Actually, she hadn't seen whether he was top or not. She was purely speculating based on her good friend's state just now. Yi Zhen's expression was very ugly. Of course, she understood what Ling Xian meant. The hooker, last night looked thin and didn't look that powerful. After torturing her for the whole night, her legs were still weak. Ling Xian, think of a way to find that hooker. She was afraid that her stepsister still had a trick up her sleeve, such as taking some photos or videos or something. Thinking of the trouble she might face next, Yi Zhen secretly gritted her teeth. She had been too careless yesterday. After asking Ling Xian again, she hurriedly said goodbye and left the hotel to go home to the company. When she arrived at the company, it was already past 10 in the morning. Yi Zhen didn't expect that there would be a big scene waiting for her. As soon as she entered her office, her direct superior, Gu Mingxiu, came over. "Xiao Yi, President Yi is looking for you." Gu Mingxiu looked at her with a hint of hidden sympathy. "Xiao Yi, President Yi might not be in a good mood." He didn't finish his sentence, but Yi Zhen knew what he meant. "Thank you, Manager Gu." She quickly went upstairs. She entered the chairman's office. In the big office, in addition to her father, Yi Nanshan, the chairman of the Jianji Group, and two others. One was her stepmother, Chen Wan, and the other was Yi Ningen, the daughter of Chen Wan and Yi Nanshan before their marriage. Seeing Yi Ningen, she thought of the generous gift she gave her last night. Yi Zhen's watery eyes darkened, but she still went forward as if nothing had happened. "Dad, you still know that I am your father?" Yi Nanshan looked at his daughter with a bad face. "What did you do last night?" Yi Zhen didn't say anything. She glanced at the direction of Yi Ningen and Chen Wan without a trace. Chen Wan was fine with a faint smile on her face. But Yi Ningen was different. Her eyes seemed to be full of schadenfreude. Yi Zhen just looked at her expression and knew that she really didn't wrong Yi Ningen last night. She gritted her teeth in her heart. But she still suppressed the impulse. It was never too late for a gentleman to take revenge. She was not in a hurry. Nothing. Yi Zhen realized that she would be late as soon as she got up this morning. She had already called Gu Mingxiu to ask for leave. "Nothing? What? Do you think you are great because you wrote a plan that can pass? Just because of your work attitude, I can't let you continue to be in charge of the plan this time." As he spoke, he slammed the table hard. "Don't follow up the case in Ninghai. Let Yi Ningen be in charge." Yi Zhen saw Yi Nanshan take the opportunity to lose his temper, and her lips raised a sneer. She glanced at Yi Ningen's face out of the corner of her eye, and she understood. It turned out that yesterday's gigolo was just the beginning. Yi Ningen was waiting for her here. She fought for the plan in Ninghai. She did it first and perfected it. Who was Yi Ningen? "Dad, I was just a little late. And I have called Manager Yi to ask for leave. If you want to deduct my salary, I have no objection. But the case in Ninghai is mine, and I will never let others do it." "Pa." Yi Nanshan slammed the table heavily. "What's your attitude?" "With your work attitude, what's wrong with me letting Yi Ningen be in charge of this case? At least she is much more ambitious than you." Yi Ningen was ambitious? Yi Zhen almost laughed. Of course she was ambitious. In order to squeeze into the upper class of Qing City, in order to change her fate, the mother and daughter tried their best to climb up and use their brains. Not long after her mother died, Yi Nanshan married Chen Wan. And Chen Wan gave birth to their other child, Yi Jianhao, only a few months after she married. According to the time, Chen Wan was already pregnant a few months before she entered the hospital. What did it mean? It meant that when her mother was still alive, Yi Nanshan and Chen Wan hooked up. Chen Wan entered the door and she didn't come alone. Yi Ningen also entered the door with her daughter, who was said to be her ex-husband's daughter. Her surname was Qin and her name was Chen Ningen. But as soon as she entered the door, she changed her surname to Yi. Yi Ningen not only had the surname Yi, but from the time she entered the door until now, she often opposed her, and always used sweet words to make her father, Yi Nanshan, happy. She looked sweet, had a sweet mouth and was good at coaxing people. In less than a few years, the whole Yi family recognized Yi Ningen, and she, the real miss of the Yi family, was in an awkward position. Now, hearing her father say that Yi Ningen should make progress, Yi Zhen almost laughed out of anger. Yi Ningen was about the same age as her, and from the time she entered the Yi family, she had always been against her. She relied on Yi Nanshan's love, and who knew how many obstacles she had set for her. But it was such a person who relied on her sweet mouth to make Yi Nanshan happy with Chen Wan and Yi Nanshan. Her whole heart was on their side. "Dad. I know." Turning to look at Yi Ningen, Yi Zhen's voice was very sincere. "Of course, I know that Ningen wants to make progress, but it's a pity. Everything else is easy, but you really can't handle the Ninghai case." "Sister, what do you mean?" Yi Ningen thought of her arrangements yesterday and was very proud. When she got the photos taken by the male prostitute yesterday, she wanted to see how Yi Zhen could be arrogant in front of her. "Nothing." Yi Zhen's lips curled up, but there was no smile in her eyes. "Ninghai's Mr. Ning is a friend of my uncle. He is willing to let us do Ninghao's work, mostly because of my uncle." Yi Nanshan's expression was not good. He knew that what she said was true. But he was still angry. "What do you mean?" Are you saying that we don't have this ability? It's true that we have this ability, but there are many companies in Qing City that are bigger than us. Yi Zhen didn't give in. Dad, don't you know how many companies in Qing City are stronger than us? Of course, Yi Nanshan knew that ever since his ex-wife died, his brother-in-law had been trying to trip him up, both openly and secretly. If it weren't for Yi Zhen, he was afraid that the current situation of Jianghai would be more difficult. But the more it was like this, the more uncomfortable he felt. He was the one who founded the company. Even if there was his ex-wife's credit, if he didn't have the ability, would the company have today's situation? His brother-in-law, why did he treat him like this? Ajin, how can you say that? Qin Wan was silent for a long time and finally spoke. Who in Qing City doesn't know your father? Who doesn't know him? He founded Jianghai single-handedly and developed the company to its current situation. Doesn't this mean that he has the ability? Why do you say that your father needs to rely on others? Yi Zhen saw that Yi Nanshan's face was becoming more and more ugly because of Chen Wan's words. In his heart, he really admired this stepmother's ability to put medicine on people's faces. Look at this ability. With a few words, she instigated the relationship between her and her father, although their relationship was not good to begin with. After Chen Wan finished putting medicine on people's faces, Yi Ninghan followed. Dad, don't be angry. She took a few steps forward and stood behind Yi Nanshan. She gently patted his back. Sister is stupid and doesn't know how to talk. She definitely didn't mean that. She just thinks that her grandfather and uncle are a little more amazing. Dad, don't be angry with sister. Yi Zhen really laughed this time. She watched the mother-daughter duo Chen Wan and Yi Ninghan sing the same tune. It made Yi Nanshan's expression change greatly. You guys stop talking. Yi Nanshan glared at Yi Zhen. This matter is settled. I don't believe that Ninghan will be responsible for the Ninghai case. Ninghan is also a daughter of the Yi family. I believe that they will also see Ninghan's ability. Yi Zhen looked at Yi Nanshan's behavior. His hands hanging by his side clenched into fists. Finally he nodded. Okay. As long as Mr. Ning agrees, I have no objection. Now was not the time to shed all pretense of cordiality. Yi Zhen threw down this sentence and took a step back. But before that, I will still be responsible for the Ninghao case. Yi Nanshan did not expect this attitude from Yi Zhen. He still wanted to say something, but Yi Zhen did not want to hear it anymore. Dad, if there's nothing else, I will go do my work. After all, Ninghai is still waiting for me to give the results. Yi Zhen left, but Yi Nanshan was still angry. Chen Wan stepped forward at the right time, stood on the other side of him and massaged his chest. Nanshan, don't be angry. Yi Zhen has misunderstood us for a long time. I think after a long time she will naturally understand. It's good that she will understand. Yi Nanshan snorted coldly. Her heart is biased toward her grandfather's family. How can she still see me, her father? Chen Wan and Yi Ningen looked at each other. Chen Wan smiled and signaled Yi Ningen to step back. She stood behind Yi Nanshan and massaged his shoulders. In the end, isn't it because we are not popular enough? However, I've heard of something that might be helpful to you. What? Yi Nanshan felt comfortable under her massage, and his anger dissipated a lot. I heard that the new mayor of Qingqing Li is not married yet. Yi Nanshan did not understand for a moment. I also heard about this. It is said that he is very young, only in his 30s. Yes. I also heard that the new mayor is not only young, but also from the Li family of Rong City. What Chen Wan knew, Yi Nanshan naturally also knew. Yes. The Li family is a well-known family. Not only does it have a good status in Rong City, but it also has connections in the capital. Nanshan, what do you think? If we were to have such a marriage? Chen Wan did not finish her sentence. Yi Nanshan turned to look at her. Following her gaze, he saw Yi Ningen standing on the side with a shy face. He suddenly brightened up. That's a good idea. However, Mayor Li has just arrived, and there are many people who want to build a relationship with him. I'm afraid he won't see us easily, right? Nanshan. Chen Wan knew what he was worried about. I heard that as soon as Mayor Li came, he went to visit the Lu family. The Lu family she was talking about was Yi Zhen's grandfather, Lu Manjiang. Yi Nanshan's eyes widened. You mean to let Yi Zhen build a relationship with Mayor Li? Wouldn't this encourage Yi Zhen to be more arrogant? Nanshan, you are so biased. You only think about Yi Zhen. Why don't you think about Yi Ningen? But, Ningen's surname is Yi now. According to seniority, she is also Old Master Lu's granddaughter. Yes. Yi Nanshan quietly understood. He looked at Chen Wan with joy in his eyes. You are so smart to think of this. When he turned to face Yi Ningen, the smile on his face was even more obvious. Ningen, make preparations in the next few days. I will make an appointment with Mayor Li. Got it, Dad? Yi Ningen smiled sweetly. I will definitely perform well. Yi Zhen confirmed the last part of the plan with Mr. Ning in Ninghai. Mr. Ning, don't worry. I will change your requirements when I go back today. I will definitely make you satisfied. Okay, I believe you. Mr. Ning looked at Yi Zhen with a trace of appreciation in his eyes. Yi Zhen, you are outstanding. To be honest, it is a bit buried in your father's small company. Mr. Ning, you are too polite. I don't deserve your praise. I'm serious. Your uncle has mentioned several times that you should go back to the Liu family. Even if you don't want to go to the Liu family, you can come to Ninghai. Thank you, Mr. Ning, but Jianghui is my family's company after all, so I hope Mr. Ning can understand. The smile on Yi Zhen's face was very sincere, but she knew that she would not leave the company. Jianghui could be where it was today. Most of the credit goes to her mother. Why should she leave and let the mother and daughter take advantage of it? Mr. Ning smiled. After talking about business, he was about to leave but suddenly remembered something. All right. Since you are here, I have something to tell you. What? I just heard a piece of news today. It has something to do with you. It has something to do with me? Yi Zhen looked at Mr. Ning and had an inexplicable bad feeling in her heart. 30 minutes later, Yi Zhen looked at the door of the hotel in front of her, her eyes cold. She really underestimated the extent of Chen Wan's shamelessness. She did not expect that Chen Wan could be so thick-skinned. She used her grandfather Lu Manjiang's name to invite Mayor Li out, and then brought Yi Ningen, the so-called granddaughter of grandfather, to go on a blind date with Mayor Li? Ridiculous, it was really too ridiculous. Grandpa only had one daughter, her mother. Her mother also only had one daughter. Where did Yi Ningen get the face to pretend to be Grandpa's granddaughter? If she did not mess up this matter today, her surname would not be Yi. She quickly walked into the hotel, reported her father's name, and asked which private room they were in. Yi Zhen's footsteps were very fast. Before entering the elevator, she received a message from Ling Xian. Yesterday's surveillance was broken and many of the scenes can't be found, but the face of the gigolo was not captured. Only the side face and the back were captured. It is currently unknown which hotel it is from. I will continue to have people investigate. Along with this message there were 2 photos of a man. Yi Zhen did not want to think about what happened that night. As soon as she found out that she was missing, she only wanted to leave as soon as possible. After that, she looked back and saw that the man was sleeping. In addition, the curtains in the room were drawn and the light was very dim. She was afraid that turning on the lights or closing the curtains would surprise the other party. The other party would pester her more when he woke up and left in a hurry. She did not know how the hotel surveillance took the photos, but the side face was very blurred. Yi Zhen struggled to match this side face with the side face in the dark, but such a blurred photo, even if the real person appeared in front of her, she would not be able to recognize him. It was better to let Ling Xian investigate more clearly. It would be good if there was a frontal photo. When the elevator arrived, Yi Zhen put her phone back into her bag. Now was not the time to look for the gigolo. At the door of the private room, Yi Zhen took a deep breath. First, she thought about the possible situation in her mind. After making a decision, she firmly pushed the door open and entered. When the people in the private room saw her appear, they were stunned. Especially Yi Nanshan. You, what are you doing here? Yi Zhen glanced inside expressionlessly. There were only Yi Nanshan, Chen Wan, and Yi Ningen. She did not see Mayor Li. She smiled, closed the door and took 2 steps inside. I heard that Dad arranged a blind date for me. Since it was arranged for me, how can I, the main character, not come? Who arranged a blind date for you? This time, Yi Nanshan really believed that the daughter in front of him was simply his nemesis. Who allowed you to come? I have an appointment with an important guest. You have no business here. Go back first. An important guest. Yi Zhen nodded. How important? Sister. Yi Ningen looked at Yi Zhen, only feeling blood rushing to her head. The usually sweet smile on her face was about to collapse. Since Dad said it is an important guest, then it is naturally very important. Also, didn't you hear what Dad said? It's none of your business here. Go back first. Yi Ningen. Yi Zhen stood there, not giving in. You seem to have made a mistake. What is it? My surname is also Yi. I'm also a member of the Yi family. I am also an employee of the Jianghui company. Whether it is official or private, no matter how important the guest is, I have the right to stay. You? Yi Ningen was angry and turned to look at Yi Nanshan. Yi Nanshan did not expect such a change. Just as he was thinking of a way to drive Yi Zhen away, the door of the private room opened again. There were two people standing at the door. The newly appointed mayor of Qingqing. He was only 33 years old this year. Beside him was his right-hand man, Secretary Qin. Secretary Qin walked in front and opened the door for Li Junxing. Mayor Li, it's here. Chapter 761. Their eyes met, and they could see the probing and sizing in each other's eyes. There were two people at the door, but Yi Zhen could tell at a glance which one was today's protagonist, Mayor Li. The main thing was that the man's aura was completely different from the other man's. Is this the new Mayor Li? Yi Zhen looked at the other party and felt a vague sense of familiarity. However, most of them were sneers. He was handsome and had a high position of power. The mayor of Qingqing. In the future, the number of predecessors is limitless. Did she, Yi Ningen, deserve such a man? Li Junxing didn't expect to see a little girl before he entered. It was not entirely accurate to say that she was a little girl. The other party was wearing a decent suit, and his hair just reached his shoulders. He looked very neat and tidy. However, the way she looked at him seemed a little strange. For some reason, Li Junxing felt a sense of familiarity when he looked at her. The two of them stared at each other. Yi Nanshan was anxious. He quickly stood up and walked in front of Li Junxing and Hu Jinyao. Chen Wan and Yi Ningen followed him and went to Li Junxing together. When she was about to reach Li Junxing, Yi Ningen didn't forget to squeeze Yi Zhen to the side without a trace. Mayor Li, you are here? Please come in. Mayor Li. Secretary Chen introduced him to Li Junxing. This is the chairman of the Jianji Group. He's also Old Master Lu's son-in-law, Chairman Yi Nanshan. Hello. Li Junxing shook hands with Yi Nanshan. As soon as he arrived at Qingqing, he went to visit Lu Manjiang. It was not because of how powerful the Lu family was. In terms of power, any aristocratic family in Rong City was powerful. The reason why he gave birth to Old Master Lu was because he had once helped his father, Li Qi, once. To the busy Li Qi, this could be considered a life-saving grace. Therefore, when Li Qi knew that Li Junxing was coming to Qing City to take up his post, he repeatedly instructed him to visit Lu Manjiang if he came. When Li Junxing went to visit Lu Manjiang, only his son was present. He had never seen Lu Manjiang's daughter. Therefore, when he received a call yesterday saying that Lu Manjiang's son-in-law wanted to meet him, he did not decline. He was the son-in-law of his benefactor, so it was only right for him to meet him. Mayor Li, you're too polite. Just call me Uncle Yi. Yi Nanshan's words were filled with intimacy and coziness. Even though Li Junxing had been in the officialdom for so many years, he almost couldn't control his expression when he heard Yi Nanshan's words. Lu Manjiang had saved Li Qi, and Li Qi and Lu Manjiang had become good friends. He called Lu Manjiang uncle. And now he calls Yi Nanshan Uncle Yi? How was this seniority calculated? The corner of Secretary Chen's mouth twitched. This Yi Nanshan was really shameless. He was really taking advantage of his status as Lu Manjiang's son-in-law. You're too kind, Chairman Yi. When I took office in Qingqing, my father told me to visit Uncle Lu. Since my father and Uncle Lu are good friends, why don't I call you Big Brother Yi? It was just a form of address. He was the son-in-law of his benefactor, so it was fine to give him some face. Big Brother Yi? It was Yi Nanshan's turn to be shocked. If Li Junxing called him Big Brother, then how was he going to introduce his daughter to him later? Wouldn't that be a different generation? Li Junxing acted as if he didn't see the expression on his face and looked at Chen Wan. You're Uncle Lu's daughter, right? Hello, Sister Lu. I'm Li Junxing. I often hear my father mention Uncle Lu. I've been to Qingqing twice, but this is the first time I've met Sister Lu. Yi Zhen finally couldn't control the expression on his face and couldn't help but laugh out loud. When she smiled, everyone else in the room turned to look at her. Chen Wan looked embarrassed when Li Junxing called her Sister Lu. But she couldn't deny it. Now that she heard Yi Zhen's mockery, she felt embarrassed as if her face was burning. Yi Ningen's expression didn't look good either. She stepped forward and was about to introduce herself to Li Junxing. She didn't expect Yi Zhen to ruin it. Li Junxing looked at the woman who was smiling brightly. She was very young and looked very beautiful. It wasn't the kind of exaggerated and flamboyant beauty. She had an oval face and almond-shaped eyes. Her appearance was gentle and classic. When she entered the room just now, he felt that the other party revealed a shrewdness that didn't match her age. And when she smiled at this moment, she gave off the feeling that she was a very hearty and cheerful person. She was really a contradictory woman. This is Yi Nanshan's face turned green. If it weren't for Li Junxing, he had no doubt that he would turn around and roll his eyes at Yi Zhen. This is my daughter. Yi Zhen. If he could, he really wanted to chase Yi Zhen out. Hello. Yi Zhen just smiled. She laughed very hard. When she heard Li Junxing greet her, she waved her hand and felt that it was too funny. Her reaction was very strange. Li Junxing didn't understand what she was laughing at. However, he was used to seeing big scenes, so he wouldn't let his expression show. He smiled and looked at Yi Zhen, who was standing behind the three of them. Can you tell me what you're laughing at? When Yi Zhen heard his words, she laughed even harder. She waved her hand. Even if she wanted to answer, she had to let her recover first. Because Chen Wan's expression just now was really too funny. Yi Nanshan's face was livid, but he tried his best to control it. Chen Wan's face was pale, and her hands were almost twisted into a ball. Forcing herself to calm down, she took a step forward and blocked Li Junxing's gaze at Yi Zhen. Mayor Li, this is my daughter Yi Ningen. Li Junxing glanced at Yi Ningen. She had a very sweet appearance. She had a round face and big eyes. This kind of girl was usually very easy for men to like. She had the feeling of a little sister next door. Ningen, come greet you, Yi Nanshan originally wanted to say brotherly. However, when he thought of how Li Junxing addressed him just now, he was embarrassed. Greetings, Uncle Li. Hello, Uncle Li. I'm Yi Ningen. Yi Ningen took a step forward with a faint smile on her face. What did the title matter? Taking him down was the real ability. When Yi Zhen heard Yi Ningen's voice, she laughed even more exaggeratedly. Li Junxing didn't respond to Yi Ningen's greeting. Her gaze was still on Yi Zhen. Yi Zhen, that's enough. There are guests here. How can you be so rude? Sister, you're too rude. The three people standing together criticized Yi Zhen. Yi Zhen clutched her stomach. It was really too funny. Yi Ningen was going on a blind date with Mayor Li, and now she was calling him uncle? Haha, why was it so funny? Seeing that the three people's faces turned green, she laughed even more exaggeratedly. So what if her image was bad? Her purpose in coming here today was to ruin this blind date. Yi Zhen, if you're not feeling well, I'll send you back. Yi Nanshan's face was red. It could be seen that he was trying his best to restrain himself. Chen Wan didn't expect Li Junxing to continue asking. Her expression became more and more ugly. She wanted to stop him, but she couldn't. In his heart, he hated Yi Zhen to death. He was really a jinx. I'm not laughing. I just think it's funny. Yi Zhen stopped smiling and glanced in Chen Wan's direction. That gaze, there was a hidden meaning. Chen Wan felt a chill down her spine. She could only stand up and smooth things over. Mayor Li, don't be offended. Our Jinjin has such a personality. She's not mature at all. Yes. Sister is so old, but she's still like a child. It's really, Yi Ningen followed. Li Junxing didn't say anything. He just looked at Yi Zhen. Miss Yi, can you tell me what you're laughing at? If she wanted to use this method to attract his attention, then he really didn't think it was. Because this girl's eyes were very clear, very clean and clear. Children just like to joke. Chen Wan took a step forward, wanting to divert Li Junxing's attention again. Today's protagonist should be Yi Ningen. Yi Zhen looked at the anxious expression on Chen Wan's face and finally stopped smiling. Yes. I like to joke just like how you like to pretend to be someone's daughter. Yi Zhen, what nonsense are you talking about? Is it nonsense? Yi Zhen smiled. She took a few steps forward, walked around the three people and walked in front of Li Junxing. This man was the mayor of Qingqing. He was also the person that Yi Ningen wanted to curry favor with. But she would never let Yi Ningen curry favor with him. It was even more impossible for Yi Ningen to use the Lu family to get promoted. Hello, Mayor Li. My name is Yi Zhen. I'm Lu Manjiang's granddaughter. My only granddaughter. Her voice was very pleasant to listen to. Li Junxing's attention was naturally focused on the three words that she emphasized. Li Junxing looked at the face of the person in front of him. The feeling he had when he first entered the door came again. She clearly had a pair of very beautiful almond-shaped eyes, and she also had a gentle temperament. However, when her eyes stared at you seriously, you could feel the shrewdness that came from inside out. Interesting. He smiled. Really? Yes. Lu Jin gently flipped her hair. My mother only gave birth to me and my grandfather only has one mother. As for this Miss Chen, I'm sorry, her surname is Chen, not Lu. Yi Zhen. Yi Zhen. Sister. Three voices sounded at the same time. Yi Zhen turned her face and looked at the three people behind her. Did I say something wrong? It was because she didn't say anything wrong that their expressions were so ugly. Who was Li Junxing? He was a smart person. Seeing this, what was there not to understand? He suddenly smiled. I see. I think I misunderstood just now. No, no, no. Merely you didn't misunderstand. Yi Zhen still had a smile on her face. Someone deliberately made you misunderstand. Yi Zhen. Yi Nanshan's face was livid. If it weren't for Li Junxing, Yi Zhen had no doubt that he would have attacked her. I'm sorry. I seem to have said too much. I'm sorry. She retracted her gaze and looked at Li Junxing. Today's timing isn't right. Next time when there's a chance, grandfather and I will invite Mayor Li to my humble home for a gathering. Li Junxing looked at this very young woman. It was rare to see such a woman. Shrewd and calculating, clear and magnanimous. She said sorry words, but there was no apology in her eyes. Every word he said had a hidden meaning. Interesting. He smiled. Indeed, today isn't a good time. Since that's the case, let's visit Uncle Lu's house next time. His words shocked Yi Nanshan. He couldn't help but show some emotions on his face. Who didn't know that Mayor Li had just taken office? He was the most popular figure in Qing City? It wasn't too difficult to invite him. If it weren't for Lu Manjiang, Li Junxing wouldn't have given them face. Mayor Li, Chairman Yi, I still have something to do today, so I'll be leaving first. Yi Zhen smiled when she heard that even the way she addressed him had changed. No, look, Mayor Li, the dishes have already been ordered. No matter what, you have to eat before you leave. Qin Wan was anxious and couldn't help but speak first. Li Junxing glanced at her with an indifferent expression. Mrs. Yi, you're too polite. You know that we also have rules now. We can't eat and drink outside casually. If she was really from Lu Manjiang's family, it wouldn't matter if they had a meal together. But if it didn't matter, it was better to avoid it. Yi Zhen smiled. This Mayor Li was a little interesting. As expected of a mayor. Listen to his level of speech. Secretary Chen, let's go. Mayor Li, I'll send you off. Yi Zhen followed behind Mayor Li. After taking 2 steps, she turned around and looked at Yi Nanshan and the others. Dad, Auntie, since the dishes have been ordered, you can enjoy them slowly. You can't waste them, right? Qin Wan was so angry that her mouth almost crooked. This wretched lass, did she purposely come to oppose him? Yi Ninggen's face turned pale. Yi Zhen, spoiling her plans everywhere. How hateful. Li Junxing had already left. Secretary Qin followed behind him. Before leaving, he glanced at Yi Nanshan. That gaze was meaningful. Yi Nanshan felt a chill run down his back. He wanted to chase after her, but he was afraid that he would make Li Junxing even more unhappy. He could only watch helplessly as Yi Zhen left just like that. Yi Zhen left the private room in a good mood. Things were much easier than she had thought. After leaving the private room, she looked at Li Junxing and felt that this new mayor was pleasing to the eye. Too smart. He was really a smart person. She liked to deal with smart people. Mayor Li, thank you for today. No matter what, even if it was for Lu Manjiang's sake, she was very grateful that he was willing to help her. Miss Yi, I've said it before. I know your grandfather. You don't have to be so polite. I still have to thank you. Yi Zhen didn't believe that Li Junxing couldn't tell that she was using him. Mayor Li, since your grandfather's friend, just call me Yi Zhen. Thank you very much for today. If there's a chance next time, I'll definitely treat you to a meal. As she spoke, she bowed slightly and leaned her body forward by 15 degrees. She looked very respectful. Li Junxing looked at her and said, Why do you have to do it next time? Can't you do it today? You haven't had dinner yet, have you? Yi Zhen was stunned. What? Is it inconvenient? No, it's very convenient. It's very convenient. After Yi Zhen replied, she felt that her question was really, if that's the case, then Mayor Li, please. Li Junxing wasn't in a hurry to leave. He turned his face and looked at Yi Zhen. The smile on his face was very indifferent. Since you asked me to call you by your name, you don't have to call me Mayor Li. Okay, Uncle Li, please. Li Junxing looked at the young lady's calm eyes and suddenly felt an indescribable feeling. He didn't feel it when Yi Ningen called him that before, but why did he feel a little uncomfortable when this young lady called him uncle? Uncle Li? Was he that old? It was still the same hotel, but they had changed to a private room. Secretary Chen had already left. Before she left the car for Li Junxing. Only Li Junxing and Yi Zhen were at the dining table. The atmosphere was a little awkward. Yi Zhen glanced at him, picked up the tea on the table and poured him a cup of tea. Uncle Li, have some tea. Thank you. Li Junxing picked up the teacup and looked at Yi Zhen. Sorry, I didn't know your mother. It's okay. Yi Zhen looked indifferent. My mother died less than half a year ago and my father married that woman. She gave birth to my younger brother less than half a year after she married. It's been almost 10 years now. Who in Qing City still remembers my mother? Everyone only knows that Mrs. Ye's surname is Chin, but no one knows that Mrs. Ye's surname was originally Liu. Her face was calm, but Li Junxing saw a flash of sadness in her eyes. He frowned slightly. This kind of thing was actually very common. It was just that a real aristocratic family would cover it up. They wouldn't do it so obviously. Looking at the sadness in the little girl's eyes, he wanted to comfort her. However, Yi Zhen didn't want to continue this topic, so she changed the topic. Alright. Uncle Li probably doesn't know, right? My dad didn't just treat you to a meal today. Just because he failed today didn't mean that he would fail in the future. If there was a first, there would be a second. With Yi Nanshan's personality, he probably wouldn't give up so easily. I can see that. Li Junxing nodded. The thoughts of those people just now were too obvious. Anyone could see it. Then what do you think of my cheap sister? Li Junxing wasn't in a hurry to answer. He looked at Yi Zhen and felt that this girl was really interesting. She was clearly curious, but she didn't care. And she looks not bad. Yi Zhen didn't say anything. She poured herself a cup of tea. The good impression that she had of Li Junxing just now was all gone now. However, I think you're not bad. Yi Zhen paused for a moment. She put down the teacup again and turned to look at Li Junxing. Uncle Li, can I ask you for a favor? Go ahead. It's not exactly a favor. I just feel that a big shot like you wouldn't like someone like my sister, right? This time, it was Li Junxing's turn to laugh. He looked at Yi Zhen and once again felt that this little girl was very interesting. Don't laugh. Yi Zhen didn't think so at first, but who asked Yi Ningen to be thick-skinned if she didn't have any other abilities? She had a sweet mouth and was thick-skinned. Her looks weren't bad either. If she found an opportunity to coax Li Junxing into accepting her, wouldn't her life in the future be difficult? I'm serious. Yi Zhen knew that in front of a smart person like Li Junxing, it was best not to play any tricks. She chose to tell the truth. Uncle Li, look, you know my grandfather. You call my grandfather uncle, so you're the same generation as my uncle. In that case, you're my sister's elder, right? Chapter 762. Li Junxing didn't hide it this time and laughed out loud. He was only 33 years old this year. However, he had been in power for a long time. Other than in front of people close to him, he didn't show his emotions most of the time. Most of the time, he could even deal with the pressure from all sides with a smile. The little girl in front of him just said a few words, but he couldn't help but laugh. Uncle Li, Yi Zhen was a little uncertain. Li Junxing stopped laughing, but the smile in his eyes didn't diminish at all. Yes, I understand what you mean. Then don't worry, you've already called me uncle. I won't do anything to my niece. Thank you, Uncle Li. Yi Zhen was relieved. She picked up the teacup again. Uncle Li, let me toast you with tea instead of wine. Li Junxing picked up the teacup and clinked it with her. Seeing the little girl smile, her eyes seemed to light up like stars. His mood suddenly improved a little. After dinner, Yi Zhen didn't exchange too much pleasantries with Li Junxing. After parting with him, she got into her car. At this time, Ling Xian called her. Xinjin, I found the gigolo. Really? Yi Zhen's eyes lit up. Where? I'll be right there. I'm at the Flower Club on Sandstar Road. She reported her location to Yi Zhen. Where are you? Should I wait for you to come and go in together, or wait for me? Keep an eye on him and don't let him run away. After saying that, Yi Zhen put her phone aside, stepped on the accelerator, and went to Sandstar Road. In less than 20 minutes, Yi Zhen saw the man. How should she put it? At first glance, he was different from what she remembered. She sat there with a cold look in her eyes. Ling Xian looked at her expression, then looked at the gigolo sitting not far away. The man was talking and laughing with a woman who looked to be around 40 years old. He didn't forget to put one hand on the woman's waist, and the expression on his face was indulgent and somewhat obscene. What's wrong? Are you sure? Is it him? It's him. Ling Xian nodded. I've asked clearly. Recently, his account suddenly increased by 200,000 yuan. Although the remittance account wasn't Yi Ningen or Chen Wan's, it was Chen Wan's younger brother who sent the money. 200,000 for one night. This money is too easy to earn. Since that was the case, it was most likely this person. Yi Zhen kept staring at the gigolo as he spoke, but he couldn't connect this person with the person from that night. Wait a moment. I bought him a clock. It's almost time. Ling Xian glanced over as she spoke. Yi Zhen saw the male host grope the woman's body again. He didn't know what he said, but the woman was so happy. She took out the tip and stuffed it into his shirt. What era is this? Still using cash seriously? Ling Xian sneered. Not long after, he saw the cowherd walking over. Ling Xian had already asked around and found out that the people working here didn't use their real names. Instead, they used stage names. This cowherd's stage name was Monin. As he got closer, Yi Zhen could see him more clearly. The person in front of her was very thin, very thin. She remembered that the man from that night was also thin, but he was lean. She could even vaguely remember the abdominal muscles on his waist. She glanced at Monin. There was no sense of familiarity, only unfamiliarity. Two beautiful sisters, which one of you called my clock? Or are you two together? Monin was about to sit down as he spoke, but his eyes widened when he saw Yi Zhen's face. You, I what? Yi Zhen's face was completely devoid of the naivety she had pretended to have in front of Li Junxing. Her expression was very cold, and her pair of gloomy eyes stared at Monin's face. Monin had worked in this flower-picking society for a long time, and he thought that he had seen all kinds of women. But at this moment he was still shocked by Yi Zhen's gaze. He swallowed his saliva and tried to calm his breathing. Miss, although I didn't serve you that day, I won't refund the money. If you feel that it was a loss, I can accompany you again tonight. What? Yi Zhen and Ling Xian looked at each other with shock written all over their faces. Half an hour later, Ling Xian looked at Yi Zhen, her eyes full of worry. How are you? Are you okay? The news they had just received was too shocking. Monin actually said that it wasn't him that night. He said that he had indeed received a sum of money, and also said that he had been hinted by the person who gave him the money to accompany Yi Zhen for a night. But that night he did nothing. Because he had been waiting in the hotel room for Yi Zhen to come, but he didn't see him. In the end, he just thought that someone had paid him to play a trick. Or perhaps these rich ladies couldn't afford to play and gave up. He didn't expect Yi Zhen to come to him today. He thought that Yi Zhen was here to ask for the money back. Do you believe what Monin said? I do. Yi Zhen nodded. Her straightforwardness puzzled Ling Xian. You believe what he says? Not entirely. At first, it was because of Monin's first words, and then she had doubts after seeing his figure. After all, the man that night looked more muscular than Monin. Also, although it was on the bed, Yi Zhen could still feel that the man seemed to be very tall. It was true that she had a quick glance that day, but the man's feet had already reached the end of the bed. It could be seen that the man was definitely not short when he was awake. Just now, Monin didn't look short, but she guessed that he was at most 1.75 to 1.78 meters tall. And the man that day was at least 1.8 meters tall. When all the details were put together, Yi Zhen believed in her own judgment. If it wasn't him, then who could it be? It was easier to handle if she knew it was a prostitute, but now it was all over. Yi Zhen shook her head. I don't know. It had been a few days since she saw the man's profile that day. The impression in her mind became fainter and fainter. Forget it. Yi Zhen didn't think about it for the time being. Just think of it as being bitten by a dog. Zhen? Don't mention it. Yi Zhen didn't want to mention it. Ling Xian had to mention it. That Zhen, it's really not that I want to spoil your mood. Have you ever thought that you don't care, but what if there are sequelae that day? As she spoke, she glanced at Yi Zhen's stomach. Yi Zhen slapped the back of her hand hard. That's enough. I took the medicine. She wasn't that naive. Even if it was the first time, even she was unwilling. But she couldn't bear the consequences of acting recklessly now. Not to mention anything else, if she was really pregnant with the child of a man of unknown origin, Lu Manjiang would probably be the first to beat her up. That's good. Ling Xian breathed a sigh of relief, but she didn't completely let it go. This stepsister of yours is really vicious. In fact, it's good that you didn't get together with that prostitute. At least, maybe it was just an accident. Yi Zhen was silent. Of course, she knew how vicious Yi Yinghan's heart was under her sweet appearance. Don't worry. I've prepared a big gift for her. It was impolite not to reciprocate. It couldn't be that she could only accept gifts from others, but she couldn't retaliate herself, right? When Yi Zhen entered the company, she felt the gazes of the people around her. Those gazes made her very uncomfortable. She quickly entered the elevator in her high heels. When she went upstairs, she received a message from Xiao Su, a colleague who had a good relationship with her. Yi Zhen, something happened. Where are you? What's the matter? The boss came down and said that the plan we made for Ninghai was leaked. Yi Zhen's palm suddenly tightened. She didn't even have time to reply to the message. The moment the elevator door opened, she quickly rushed out. Yi Zhen. Xiao Su saw her and quickly stood up. You're finally here. It's all over the company today. They said that the case in Ninghai was leaked, and they said that you— She didn't finish her words, but Yi Jin knew what she meant. Where's Manager Gu? He was called up. Xiao Su pointed up, which was naturally Yi Nanshan's office. Yi Jin turned to go up, but Xiao Su stopped her. Yi Jin, the higher-ups are angry. You, don't worry. I know. Yi Jin didn't want to stay. She patted Xiao Su on the shoulder. Thank you, Xiao Su. Yi Jin didn't rush upstairs. She went to her office first. She was the team leader in the planning department and had her own independent office. Sitting down behind the desk, she opened her laptop and browsed the internal forum of the company. Ninghai's order this time was done for the Shogi company because of the Liu family. The Liu family had a high status in Qing City. Yi Jin's grandfather, Liu Manjiang, was a well-known figure in Qing City. The so-called well-known did not mean how big the Liu family's business was or how powerful the company they ran was. It was because Liu Manjiang was an economics professor. His students and old friends were all over the world. The Liu family was a scholarly family. Not only Liu Manjiang, but Yi Jin's grandmother was also a university professor. Yi Jin's grandfather had 2 children. One was Yi Jin's mother, Liu Hui. The other was Yi Jin's uncle, Liu Zhishuan. Liu Zhishuan was not much older than Yi Jin. He was Liu Manjiang's son. Yi Jin's grandmother accidentally got pregnant when she was very old and later gave birth to Liu Zhishuan. After giving birth to Liu Zhishuan, Yi Jin's grandmother injured her body and passed away not long after. At that time, Liu Hui, who was already 18 years old, took on the responsibility of taking care of her younger brother. Therefore, after his sister passed away, Liu Zhishuan paid special attention to Yi Jin, his niece. He was Liu Manjiang's child, young and mature. He was influenced by what he saw since he was young, and he started his own business in university. Now, Liu Zhishuan's company was ranked quite high in Qing City. Although it couldn't compare to old families like the Zhan family and the Dong family, it still had a say in Qing City. President Ning of Ninghai had a good relationship with Liu Zhishuan. For his sake, he handed Ninghai's project to Jiang Hui. Moreover, he appointed Yi Jin to be in charge. Ever since Yi Jin got this project, she hadn't had a good rest for nearly a month. Yesterday, she had just confirmed the final details with President Ning. She really couldn't figure out how such a thing could happen under such circumstances. There was only one post that was the most discussed on the internal forum today, and it was also pinned at the top. It said that Yi Jin ate from 2 families. On one hand, she was planning for Ninghai, and on the other hand, she had dealings with Ninghai's rival, Zhongyuan Company. The post not only had words but also photos. It was a photo of her eating with the general manager of Zhongyuan Company. Seeing that photo, Yi Jin was really speechless. This photo was taken many days ago. At that time, Ninghai had just handed the case over to them. And that day she had an appointment with Ling Xian, so they had a meal together. Halfway through, Ling Xian answered the phone and went out for a while. That was when the general manager of Zhongyuan Company came over to greet her. Although the other party was Ninghai's rival, they didn't have a bad relationship with Jiang Hui. Yi Jin didn't expect that she had just exchanged a few pleasantries with the other party, and someone had taken a photo and posted it on the company's internal forum. Yi Jin read the post from beginning to end. Before she could finish reading it, the internal line rang. It was Yi Nanshan. Come up and make yourself clear. Hanging up the phone after saying this was Yi Nanshan's style. She was afraid that not only him but there were also other people upstairs. Ignoring Yi Nanshan's clamor, Yi Jin first called the public relations department. Such a post has no basis in fact and you dare to put it up? You don't want to do it anymore, do you? Okay, let's change people. After hanging up the phone, she called President Ning. As long as President Ning believed it, nothing else was a big problem. Yi Jin first dealt with the matter in front of her. In the middle, Yi Nanshan called again and asked her to go upstairs to make things clear. Yi Jin's reaction was to ignore it. She directly picked up her bag and was ready to leave. Yi Jin, you. Yi Nanshan made a few calls but couldn't get her to come. He put down his face again. So he asked Gu Mingxiu to come down and call her up. I have an appointment with President Ning. Now I'm going to Ninghai Company. Is there a problem? Seeing the surprise on Gu Mingxiu's face, Yi Jin smiled. Don't worry, Manager Gu, this matter will be solved. She would go to Ninghai now and make things clear with President Ning. Yi Jin went out and went directly in the direction of Ninghai Company. She believed that President Ning had his own judgment and would not easily believe that she would do such a thing. What's more, there was an agreement between them. Even if Zhongyuan really knew about Ninghai's plan, so what? Would he dare to use it? She thought so, but she did not dare to be careless. Some things had to be solved as soon as possible. However, the more anxious she was, the more things would happen. Yijin's car broke down halfway. Yijin got out of the car and called for a tow truck. She was about to call a taxi to Ninghai Company when she didn't know that there were people in several cars. Just as she was about to call for a Didi, a black Audi stopped in front of her. She took a step back and put down the back seat of the car. Li Junxing's face was inside. Yijin? You're Uncle Li? When Li Junxing heard the little girl call him Uncle Li, a smile appeared on his face. What's wrong? Did the car break down? Yes. Yijin nodded. It's not easy to stop a taxi here. I was just about to call for a Didi. Where are you going? Get in the car, I'll give you a ride. Chapter 763. Yijin got into the car without much hesitation. Firstly, Li Junxing was the mayor of a city after all. There was no need for him to harm her. Secondly, she was in a hurry to explain to Mr. Ning. After getting into the car, Yijin looked at Secretary Qin, who was driving in front, and realized that it was office hours. Uncle Li, are you busy? Will it delay your business at this time? She was indeed very anxious, but she didn't want Li Junxing to misunderstand that she didn't know etiquette. It's okay. Li Junxing smiled. I just finished work. I happen to be free now. Then I'll have to trouble you, Uncle Li. Yijin was natural and unpretentious. Li Junxing looked at her and a smile appeared on his face. Of course, he didn't miss the anxious look on her face. Where are you going? Ninghai Company. After Yijin finished speaking, he thought that Li Junxing had just arrived in Qing City and probably didn't know, so he told him the address of Ninghai. Okay, Li Junxing instructed Secretary Qin. Secretary Qin was very surprised. The person who had been following Li Junxing in Lin City was Secretary Li. He was Secretary Li's assistant. Later, Secretary Li was transferred to another place. Thus he followed Li Junxing to Qing City. Speaking of which, he had been with Li Junxing for a few years. He was used to seeing a very gentle smile on his face. But he wasn't close to anyone. Thank you, Uncle Li. Li Junxing turned to look at her. It seemed that this was the first time he had the interest to correct her. Speaking of which, you shouldn't be much older than you, right? Yijin didn't understand. He didn't understand why he was talking about age. You call my grandfather uncle. If I don't call you Uncle Li, what should I call you? Yijin didn't think about it for a moment, but he suddenly nodded. Should I call you Uncle Li? Li Junxing felt the car tilt slightly at this moment. He glanced indifferently at Secretary Qin in front of him. Secretary Qin quickly steadied the car and stared at the road in front, not daring to listen anymore. Your company has business dealings with Ninghai? When he came to Qing City, he had done some homework on the businesses in Qing City. Not to mention the power of the Zhan family in Qing City. Of course, ever since Zhan Haoze returned to the Zhan family, he had split up a lot of the Zhan family's power. Other than the Zhan family, there was also the Ning family, the Dong family. The Lu clan could be considered a well-developed aristocratic family in Qingqing. The Yi family could barely be counted as one of them. However, his foundation was still a little shallow. Yes. Yijin nodded. My uncle has a good relationship with Director Ning. He asked them to hand over a proposal to us. The car was very quiet. Yijin looked at Li Junxing. Uncle Li, speaking of which, I still owe you a meal. Last time she clearly said that she was treating, but in the end, Li Junxing paid the bill. In this way she owed him twice. Uncle Li, when do you have time? Today? Ah. I have time today. Li Junxing looked at her stunned expression and felt very satisfied with the effect he had created. Then. Yijin was just being polite. She was still in a hurry to go to Ninghai to explain to the people. Go and do your work first. All right. Yijin resisted the urge to pat her chest. For some reason she actually felt a little nervous when facing Li Junxing. They arrived at Ninghai Company and got out of the car. After Yijin reported, he went upstairs to look for Director Ning. Recently, she had been coming often and was familiar with the way. Director Ning was indeed a little unhappy and emotional. However, he wasn't nervous or angry. There were rules in the industry. Even if a plan was really leaked, the person who got it couldn't use it. It could only be said that his plan was known in advance and he would be a little unhappy. Yijin was here to explain. At the same time, because Ninghai had given them more time before, she could do it again. She expressed her sincerity to Director Ning and told him about the solution. Regarding this incident, she said that the company would definitely deal with it to the end. Moreover, there was no evidence at the moment. That photo was just a chance encounter. Maybe this was what he wanted you to see on purpose? Yi Zhen believed that with Director Ning's status, it was impossible for him to be so shallow as to convict her based on a photo. The explanation went smoothly, and Director Ning was also satisfied with the solution. Before leaving, Yi Zhen made a small request to Director Ning. "Xiao Ning, before everything is resolved, can you not tell my dad, that is, anyone from our Jianghui company, that you will continue to sign the contract? This matter could be big or small, but if Ninghai Company really determined that Jianghui had breached the contract, they would not be able to bear the consequences." Seeing Director Ning's puzzled gaze, Yi Zhen smiled a little awkwardly. "I'm just trying to catch the traitor. Otherwise, why would the photo of me sitting with him for less than 3 minutes be circulated for all of you to see? As the saying went, one shouldn't wash one's dirty linen in public." If possible, Yi Zhen really didn't want people to know about some of the company's dirty linen. However, since the other party had used such a method to scheme against her, she couldn't hide it even if she wanted to. Director Ning nodded in understanding and finally agreed. Yi Zhen knew that the other party was giving face to her uncle, but she still thanked him and said that she would treat him to a meal next time. 40 minutes later, Yi Zhen came out of Ninghai Building. Her phone called and said that the car had been towed away. She sighed and raised her hand to call a taxi, but she suddenly realized that the car parked by the roadside looked a little familiar. She paused and walked forward with some uncertainty. The car window rolled down and she saw Li Junxing's face. She could see Li Junxing reading a document in his hand. When he saw her come down, he raised his head to look at her. He sat in the car and looked very calm. "Is the matter done?" "Yes." Yi Zhen didn't dare to think that way, but she was really curious. "Uncle Li, you've been waiting for me here? Didn't you say you were going to treat me to a meal?" Li Junxing's words made Yi Zhen's eyeballs almost fall out. Mayor Li didn't want her to have a meal? "Yes." She glanced at her phone. It was still early for dinner. "Get in the car." Li Junxing closed the document and put it aside. Yi Zhen got into the car without hesitation. "Thank you, Uncle Li. What do you want to eat?" "Whatever." After Yi Zhen said this, he came back to his senses. Some people on the internet said that the most annoying thing was to ask others what they wanted to eat when they were eating, and they answered anything. "Uncle Li, I'm not picky about food. It's up to you." Li Junxing nodded and told Secretary Chen. The car started, and Yi Zhen looked at Li Junxing's side profile. "Uncle Li, don't you want to go back to work?" She said it in general. In fact, she had never been to the city's mayor's office in all her life. "Not today." Li Junxing looked at the little girl. In his eyes, she was really a little girl. "My work today is to go out for research. It's already done." Yi Zhen nodded and was speechless for a moment. But strangely, she didn't feel restless just because she was sitting next to a man. This feeling was a little new. But maybe it was because of Li Junxing's official position. Or maybe it was because of him. He gave people a very stable feeling. Yes, it was stable. Yi Zhen couldn't help but look at him again. Li Junxing was also looking at her. When he met her gaze, he couldn't help but raise his eyebrows. "Is there something on my face?" "No." Yi Zhen stuck out her tongue and shook her head. Just as she was about to find a topic, her phone rang. "Sorry, Uncle Li, I'll take a call." Li Junxing had a whatever expression on his face. Yi Zhen took out her phone. It was Yi Nanshan's number. When she picked it up, she accidentally pressed the hands-free button. When she was about to press it, Yi Nanshan's voice was already coming from the other end of the line. "Yi Zhen, where did you run off to? You've made such a big mess and you're still in the mood to wander around outside? Go into the company now. Also, from now on, you're not allowed to interfere with the Ninghai case. Do it for Ninghan. I'm telling you." Yi Zhen was a little embarrassed. That string of words was said very quickly. She heard it even if she didn't want to hear it. Knowing that Li Junxing was beside her, she didn't plan to say anything more and quickly hung up. "I'm sorry, Uncle Li." Li Junxing glanced at her and didn't say anything. Yi Zhen felt a little awkward. This kind of emotion was different from the awkwardness of not wanting President Ning to know just now. She couldn't help but move a little closer to the car window. Her hands also changed from holding her phone to twisting together. Yi Zhen's phone rang again. Just as Yi Zhen was about to hang up, Li Junxing reached out and picked up the phone. Yi Zhen's eyes widened. She could hear Yi Nanshan's voice without the hands-free. "Yi Zhen, you actually hung up on me." "I'm Li Junxing." Yi Zhen was speechless. Li Junxing turned on the hands-free. Yi Nanshan's voice could clearly be heard from the car. Li Junxing, Director Yi, we just met a few days ago. Mayor Li Zhenjin, she She's with me. I don't know, why are you looking for her? No, nothing. Yi Zhen couldn't see Yi Nanshan's expression through the phone, but she knew that his expression must be very interesting. It was a pity that she didn't see it with her own eyes. Since there's nothing else, I'll hang up first. I still have to go eat with Yi Zhen. No, it's fine. Okay. Goodbye, Director Yi. Li Junxing hung up and handed the phone back to Yi Zhen. Yi Zhen looked at her phone. Uncle Li, actually, she could handle such a small scene by herself. It's fine. Can we go eat now? Yes. Yi Zhen nodded and gripped her phone tightly. Her emotions were a little complicated. She glanced at Li Junxing and the corners of her mouth twitched. Thank you. Uncle Li, since you called me Uncle Li, you don't have to be so polite with me. Li Junxing thought about what he heard her say last time. Does Director Yi usually talk to you like this at home? More or less. Even if he didn't yell at her or scold her, his tone wasn't very good. Li Junxing frowned slightly. He thought of Hua Jinyao. Hua Jinyao's relationship with his mother was especially bad in the past. Although it was better now, who could accept being treated like this by their parents? His expression looked too serious. Yi Zhen bit her lip and cleared her throat. Actually, it's not that bad. As if seeing that Li Junxing didn't believe her, she twitched the corner of her mouth. It's true. You can tell from the name that it's named after my mother. My mother has 30% of the company's shares. Before my mother left, she gave my father 20% of the shares and left the remaining 20% for me. This was also the reason why Yi Nanshan was dissatisfied. Because to Yi Nanshan, a married daughter was like water that was poured out. In the future, Yi Zhen would definitely get married. She had so many shares in her hands. This made him very dissatisfied. That was why after Yi Zhen graduated, she entered the planning department and became a small staff member. Before I turned 18, these shares were entrusted to my father. Later, when I turned 18, my grandfather and uncle pressured my father to give me the shares. My father had to be willing even if he didn't want to. So you see, I have 20% of the shares in my hands. My dad is just trying to satisfy his craving. She said it very calmly, and there was even a faint smile on her face. But what kind of person was Li Junxing? He could tell at a glance that Yi Zhen's casual words revealed a trace of sadness that couldn't be told to others. He made a very sudden move and reached out to hold Yi Zhen's hand. If you don't want to laugh, don't laugh. Yi Zhen was stunned for a moment. Her hand was held by him. His hand was very warm, very warm. It was midsummer and it was very hot outside, but there was air conditioning in the car. The temperature of his palm made Yi Zhen feel an electric current flowing from his hand to her body. That feeling made her feel as if she had been electrocuted, and she quickly retracted her hand. Uncle Li, I thought of what to eat for lunch. Let's eat hot pot. When Li Junxing held her hand, he was momentarily stunned. Compared to him, her hand was small and soft. He didn't expect that he would take the initiative to hold a little girl's hand. The moment he held it, he didn't want to let go. He didn't expect the little girl to be frightened. The moment he retracted his hand, Li Junxing inexplicably felt that his palm was empty. Eating hot pot on such a hot day? Then should we eat Korean food? Li Junxing saw that she deliberately changed the topic and even approached the car door without a trace. He frowned slightly. Let's eat Japanese food. I still have a meeting in the afternoon. I don't want to go with the smell all over my body. Okay. It didn't matter what she ate. What was important was to repay the favor she owed him previously. On the one hand, she didn't want to owe anyone. On the other hand, the electric feeling just now scared her. Li Junxing is your uncle, she told herself in her heart. Keep your distance to be safe. Li Junxing entered the Japanese restaurant and found that the little girl was much more reserved than before. She didn't look at his eyes and she only nodded or shook her head in response to his words. When the waiter served the dishes, the little girl used the excuse of going to the bathroom to run away. He left him sitting alone in the room. He thought about how the little girl was so scared just by holding hands. If he did something else, Li Junxing was a little scared by this thought. He had always been pure and had few desires. Compared to his other childhood friends, he knew that he had to walk the path of righteousness since he was young, so he was used to being self-disciplined. Other than a few of his childhood friends' sisters, he had never been close to women. After so many years, he had seen a lot of tricks in the officialdom. Those women who came to his door openly and secretly, he didn't even look at them, let alone touch them. The only time he lost control was the last time he was schemed against, and he still hadn't found that woman. Now that he met a girl who looked quite interesting, she avoided him like a snake or a scorpion. This feeling was really a little strange. When the waiter served the dishes, Yi Zhen finally came back. I'm sorry. Uncle Li, I answered a phone call. Li Junxing looked at her and spoke. Answering the phone was fake. Avoiding him was real. He didn't expose her clumsy lie. He picked up the chopsticks at the side. Just in time, the dishes are here. Let's eat. Okay. I've been to this restaurant once before. Their sashimi and sushi are very authentic. You can try them. He didn't pick up any food for Yi Zhen, afraid that she would feel uncomfortable. Okay. Yi Zhen lowered her head and focused on eating. She thought that after eating this meal and paying for it, she would treat it as returning the favor. Next time she would stay away from Li Junxing. After eating, the two of them walked out. Yi Zhen wanted to pay the bill, but she was told that Secretary Chen had already paid. Uncle Li, look, I already said that it's my treat. It's okay. It's not a big deal. Li Junxing could now tell that the little girl treated him as someone with ulterior motives. He couldn't help but laugh. If he didn't look in the mirror every day, he would have thought that his appearance was terrifying and scary. Uncle Li, Yi Zhen. Knowing what she wanted to say, Li Junxing interrupted her. Your grandfather once saved my father's life. Yi Zhen was stunned for a moment. Li Junxing's expression was very serious. You may not understand what this so-called saving life means. But to the Li family, Uncle Lu is the Li family's benefactor. Uncle Li? I helped you because it was convenient. If you feel burdened, I'll pay attention next time. I didn't mean that. Yi Zhen suddenly realized that in front of Li Junxing, this little trick of hers wasn't enough. It doesn't matter if you do. As Li Junxing spoke, he stood in front of Yi Zhen with a calm expression. To me, you're like the little niece of an uncle's family. Understand? Understood. Yi Zhen nodded and laughed at herself for being oversensitive. It was just holding hands. Thank you, Uncle Li. Look, I said that it was my treat. Then, in total, he had helped him twice. It's okay. Let's go. I'll send you back. There's no need. I can take a taxi. It's not easy to call a taxi here. Li Junxing didn't give her a chance to refuse. Also, I want to go back to the city mayor's office. It's on the way. This reason made Yi Zhen speechless. It was really on the way. She had no choice but to follow behind Li Junxing. The two of them left the room one after the other. Secretary Chen went to the opposite side to drive over. Li Junxing took Yi Zhen to the front. Yi Zhen walked in front of Li Junxing. She thought about how she had been tempted in front of him today. He clearly knew it, but he didn't say anything. She felt a little awkward for a moment. She couldn't help but turn around and want to say something, but there was a small step below. When she turned around, her other foot stepped on nothing. Chapter 764. Be careful. Li Junxing held her waist and helped her stand steadily. Yi Zhen was in his arms, her body nestled against his chest. Just like that, she could feel the thickness and warmth of his chest. She blushed inexplicably and tried to get out of his arms with her hands and feet. Li Junxing hugged her waist and spun half a circle before letting go of her. There are steps. Li Junxing looked at this little girl. She looked quite smart. Why was she so careless? Be careful when you walk. Thank you. Yi Zhen was really embarrassed. She wasn't like this in the past, but now she lost her composure in front of Li Junxing again and again. You're welcome. As long as you don't think I'm taking advantage of you. Uncle Li must be joking. Yi Zhen was not narcissistic to such an extent. At this awkward moment, Secretary Chen drove the car over. The two of them got into the car. Yi Zhen sat further away than before. Li Junxing looked at her and didn't say anything else. He picked up the documents in the car and started reading. The car stopped awkwardly at the entrance of the Jianghui company. Yi Zhen picked up her bag and got out of the car. Thank you, Uncle Li. Goodbye, Uncle Li. She called Uncle Li twice in a row. Li Junxing looked up at her. The little girl's eyes were clear and there were stars shining in them. But in the end, his cultivation was still too shallow, and he saw through that little thought in front of him. You're welcome. Then I'm leaving. Goodbye, Uncle Li. Wait. Seeing that she was about to close the car door, Li Junxing stopped her. While she was surprised, he took out a card. It was a very personal name card, black with gold lettering. There was only Li Junxing's name and phone number. If there's anything you can't solve, you can call me. Yi Zhen took the business card and looked at him with a complicated expression. Uncle Li? Since you called me Uncle Li, you can keep this name card. Maybe you'll need it. Yi Zhen knew that, but she didn't want to owe him a favor. This time, before she could say thank you, Li Junxing had already asked Secretary Chen to drive. Holding the name card, he finally put it into his bag. Then he saved the number in his phone. Not long after Yi Zhen entered the company, the internal line rang. It was still Yi Nanshan. Unable to escape anymore, Yi Zhen quickly went upstairs. Yi Nanshan was not alone in his office. Yi Ningen was also there. I thought you didn't know you were coming back. Yi Nanshan looked at Yi Zhen with obvious dissatisfaction. Why did you take so long to eat? Why don't you just eat out for the whole afternoon? I don't have to go to the office today? Sure. Yi Zhen nodded and admitted, next time I will tell Uncle Li that you think I didn't treat him well. Next time you eat with him, I will eat longer with him. Although he didn't want to have too much to do with Li Junxing. However, at times like this, Yi Zhen did not mind using him. Yi Nanshan was angered by him. Before he could say anything, Yi Ningen couldn't help it. Sister, how can you say that? You've caused such a big mess. Dad called you back because he was worried about you. How can you talk to your father like that? Yi Zhen looked at Yi Ningen, who was finally not sweet today, but began to attack him. Since Chenwan wasn't here, she couldn't hold it in anymore. What trouble have I caused? You still have the nerve to say that. Yi Nanshan slammed the table. Tell me, why did the people of the Central Plains know about the plan you made for Ninghai? Also, how could you contact the Central Plains when you were in contact with Ninghai? Yi Zhen looked at Yi Nanshan. Ever since the incident broke out this morning, not a single word from him said that he would help her solve the problem. From this morning until now, every word was an accusation, and every word was contempt for her ability. This was her father, her biological father. Although she already knew, Yi Zhen still felt that it was ironic. Dad, did you get something wrong? What can I get wrong? Isn't it because you're careless and don't pay attention usually? Dad. Yi Zhen couldn't take it anymore. She raised her voice and looked at Yi Nanshan. She put her hands on the edge of his desk and glared at him. Dad, what I want to say is that this morning's matter was only exposed on the company's internal forum at first. I don't care whether it's true or not. I also don't want to ask why the plan was leaked and how the Central Plains company found out. I just want to say that when our company's public relations department found out about this, they didn't want to suppress the news. Instead, they wanted to make it known to the whole company. Dad, what's wrong? In your heart, is it okay for our company to have such a scandal? Yi Nanshan was stunned for a moment. Yi Zhen didn't give him a chance to speak. Let's not talk about whether it's true that I leaked the plan. Even if it's really cured. Something like this happens in the company, it's a family scandal. As the saying goes, don't wash your dirty linen in public. So, Dad, you're just going to watch everyone in the company talk about this and do nothing? Who's the one who doesn't care? Sister, isn't it wrong to say that? How can Dad suppress it? When everyone came to the company in the morning, they all saw the company's forum. Dad really let someone deal with it. Isn't that because he feels guilty? Yi Zhen smiled and looked at Yi Ningen. Her eyes were cold. Letting someone deal with it means that he feels guilty? So, not only did he not let someone deal with it, but he also made it known to the people in Ninghai. Do you think that we don't keep our credibility? Do you think that the integrity of the whole company will be affected? Yi Nanshan didn't speak. Yi Zhen sneered. When I came, I already let the public relations department deal with it. I haven't checked the forum to see if the posts in the morning have been deleted. If not, I strongly request that the manager of the public relations department be replaced. Don't think that she didn't know that the manager of the public relations department was Chen Wan's person. Sister. Don't change the topic. Yi Ningen didn't expect Yi Zhen to not play according to the rules. It's easy to delete the posts in the forum, but it can't cover up that you were careless and leaked the company's secrets. I leaked the company's secrets? Yi Zhen seemed to have heard a joke. She looked at Yi Ningen coldly. Yi Ningen, if your IQ is lower than a pig's, don't open your mouth. Otherwise, you'll expose your pig attribute. What? Yi Ningen was scolded like this. She was so angry that she took a step forward. Are you scolding me? What's wrong with scolding you? Yi Zhen looked at Yi Nanshan's dark face and sneered. Yi Ningen, have you forgotten who I am in the company? I'm not only the leader of the planning team of Jianghui. Please remember, I'm also a shareholder of Jianghui. I have 20% of the shares of Jianghui. The company is good and I'm good. If there's a problem with the company, what benefits can I get? If I affect the company's reputation, what benefits can the company get? She asked 3 questions in a row, leaving Yi Ningen speechless. Yi Nanshan's face eased a lot. Yi Ningen stuttered for a long time and finally found a point to counterattack. How do I know what you can get from the company? Maybe you're just trying to get revenge. If you do this, you can make it difficult for father. Yes, you're trying to get revenge. Yi Zhen smiled and looked at Yi Nanshan. TSK. Such a stupid daughter, but he liked her so much that he pestered her at home every day. Yes, I'm trying to get revenge. Revenge against who? Revenge against me. Yi Ninggen's tone was even firmer than before. Yes, you're trying to get revenge on me and my mother. You hate us for taking away your position. So, I took the risk of losing 20% of my shares just to hate you and put the whole company, Yi Ninggen. Yi Zhen added with a sneer, it's your own business that you're stupid. Don't think others are as stupid as you. That. Yi Ninggen was very angry. She had been laughed at by Yi Zhen several times today. Look at my sister, she's scolding me. Sorry, I'm not scolding you. I'm just telling the truth. Enough. Yi Zhen. Don't talk too much. Yi Nanshan couldn't bear to see Yi Ninggen being wronged, so he couldn't help but speak up to defend her. Yi Zhen had long seen through Yi Nanshan's nature. He knew that no matter where and when he stood on Yi Ninggen's side, he was no longer disappointed. Dad, I can stop talking. But I hope Yi Ninggen can understand. The General Design Company, in addition to the surname Yi, is also surnamed Liu. Even Yi Nanshan began to get angry. I won't joke about the company. I won't joke about my own interests either. Doing this kind of thing will not benefit me at all. Yi Nanshan was very angry. He did not want to speak at all. Yi Zhen did not need him to speak. Dad, if there's nothing else, I'll go out first. After all, I still need to prepare a new plan to go to Ninghai to apologize. Ignoring the two people behind him, Yi Zhen went straight out of the office. Yi Zhen knew that she would not see those posts in the afternoon when she came to the company. Sure enough, when she finished her work and looked at the company's internal forum, the previous posts had been deleted. Sneer. In fact, Yi Zhen knew very well. Based on Chen Wan's personality, she would not be willing to let anyone in the company that she had planted. For example, the manager of the public relations department. For example, there was also the manager of the marketing department. Speaking of which, it seemed that in the whole company only the planning department where she was in, and the logistics department did not have Chen Wan's people. In the next few days, Yi Zhen began to be busy again. After all, the case in Ninghai still needed to be modified. In addition to the modification, Yi Zhen also began to make arrangements. Because of her request, Ninghai had not expressed its position until now. In the eyes of other people in the company, this meant that Ninghai was willing to accept their silent accusation. But Yi Zhen was not worried at all. In the next few days, Yi Zhen modified all the parts of the case in Ninghai that needed to be modified. After the modification, she saved another plan on the computer. As for the plan for Ninghai, she saved it into a USB flash drive and took it away in her bag. On this day, she did not lock the door of the office just like the previous days. She also turned on the surveillance camera in her office, just like the previous days. Before she found the mole, Yi Zhen did not dare to take it lightly. She knew that the mole might not be exposed so soon, but she still had to try. She believed that after she leaked the news that the plan for Ninghai had been preliminarily confirmed by Ninghai Company, the person behind it would not be able to sit still. The person behind it would definitely not be able to sit still. As long as the other party took action, she would have a chance. But before that, she had to give the gift to Yi Ninggen first. It seems that you are in a good mood. Ling Xian looked at the surrounding environment and then sat down next to Yi Zhen. It is indeed good. Yi Zhen crooked his finger at her and said, guess what kind of gift I prepared for my good stepsister? Competing with her for Yi Nanshan's favor, wanting to step on her head, and going against her in every way she could tolerate these things. The only thing she could not tolerate was Yi Ninggen's attempt to take action against the company. The company not only belonged to Yi Nanshan, but also to her mother, Lu Hui. She could give up Yi Nanshan's share, but she would never give up her mother's share. You asked me to come just to admire your results? Of course. Yi Zhen poured a glass of wine for Ling Xian. Good things should be shared with friends. So, please come and admire my results. As she spoke, she glanced at the entrance of the bar. She was sitting in a very convenient position. She could see the entrance of the bar, but because there was a pillar in front of her, she had to go around the pillar to see this side. Soon she saw Yi Ninggen enter the door. Her expression was not very good. Yi Zhen curled her lips with a somewhat mocking smile on her face. Yi Ninggen was not in the Yi family from the beginning. She married in with Chen Wan, which meant that she had been living outside for the past 10 years. Yi Zhen had not fully investigated Chen Wan's past. She only knew that when she married in, she brought a daughter with her. Later, Yi Jun tried her best to find out Chen Wan's previous residence, which gave her a very interesting piece of information. This Chen Wan once lived an unhappy life. She lived with her daughter Yi Ningen in the old city area of Qing City that had not yet been developed. Yi Ningen was sweet and cute when she was a child, and it was true that she was very popular. But it was also a curse. At that time she was only 13 or 14 years old, but she attracted the attention of several gangsters living near the old city area. Then, naturally, she was blocked by others. However, Yi Ningen was also powerful. Seeing that she was about to be bullied by the gangsters, she actually used her appearance to her advantage. Her sweet appearance made the gangster leader take care of her. Not only did she not hurt Yi Ningen, but she also recognized her as a sister. That was it. Yi Jun really admired Yi Ningen. Not everyone was capable of such a thing. Later she turned on the cheat mode. After Yi Ningen recognized the gangster leader as her brother, no one in that area bullied Yi Ningen anymore. However, there were two sides to everything in this world. Although no one bullied Yi Ningen, that gangster really cared about Yi Ningen. He had a little power. Yi Ningen was a child who grew up in a single-parent family. In the eyes of the gangster he was not bad. Also, his power was enough to match Yi Ningen. But how could Yi Ningen really be with a gangster leader? She just wanted to use his power to protect herself. Therefore, when Yi Ningen followed Chen Wan and climbed up Yi Nanshan, she became a young lady of a wealthy family. Yi Ningen wished she could completely forget this history. What Yi Jun wanted to do today was to let Yi Ningen remember that she was not alone, but she had a good brother. Across the huge bar, Yi Jun had been staring in Yi Ningen's direction. When he saw her meet a Liang that gangster leader, Yi Jun smiled. That's it. Ling Xian looked at the scene of the reunion. This is your gift? Was it too light? How is that possible? Yi Jun stood up. Don't worry. Today is just the first step. She knew clearly what kind of life Chen Liang, that was a Liang, had been living all these years. A person at the bottom of society suddenly found that the person he used to know, who was in the same class as him, had suddenly changed into another class. What would a crazy person do under jealousy? She was looking forward to it. When Yi Jun entered the banquet hall, there were already a lot of people in the living room. Many of them were familiar faces. Of course, there were many unfamiliar faces. Today's banquet was the birthday banquet of CEO Ning's wife, Mrs. Ning. Jiang Hui had recently cooperated with the company, so CEO Ning naturally invited her. Before Yi Jun came, she had carefully selected a gift, and then went to the shop she often went to have her hair styled and changed into a dress before coming. After entering the door, she gave the gift in her hand to Mrs. Ning. Before she could find a place to sit down, she saw three people walking into the venue. Yi Nanshan, Chen Wan, Yi Ningen. Yi Jun frowned. She didn't know that CEO Ning had also sent an invitation to them. She was not prepared to go up and greet them. Before the mole was caught, Yi Nanshan was very dissatisfied with her. She thought about it and used the excuse of going to the bathroom to leave for a while. Unexpectedly, she didn't think of greeting Yi Ningen, but she came to find her first. Yi Jun, is it you? She had just left the bathroom and had not had time to return to the banquet hall when she was blocked in the corridor. Yi Jun looked at the anger on her face and didn't quite understand what Yi Ningen was doing. Is it you? Yi Ningen looked around and saw that there was no one else. She couldn't help but ask, is it you who brought Chen Liang here? Who's Chen Liang? Yi Jun looked puzzled. But in her heart, she knew that her gift should have quite a good effect. Do I know him? You're still pretending. It's clearly you. Yi Ningen thought of being harassed by Chen Liang during this time and was furious. Other than Yi Jun, she couldn't think of anyone else who would do such a thing. In a hurry, she raised her hand and was about to make a move. Yi Jun watched her movements and waited for her to make a move to teach her a lesson. However, Yi Ningen's wrist was grabbed by someone. Yi Jun was stunned when she saw Li Junxing. She didn't know when he had arrived, but his hand happened to grab Yi Ningen's hand. Chapter 765. Li Junxing hadn't planned to come to this banquet. However, the Ning family was developing very well in Qing City. They were also on good terms with the Zhan family, the Lu family, and the Dong family. CEO Ning's father, Old Master Ning, had interacted with the Li family before. Therefore, after receiving the invitation from CEO Ning, Li Junxing still decided to show his face. He had just delivered the gift and was about to leave. He didn't expect to see Yi Jun. The little girl was wearing a long white dress today. She was different from the capable and experienced he had seen her the past few times. The little girl dressed like this looked a little more ethereal and elegant. She was standing in the corridor. The bright lights above her head allowed him to clearly see her expression. It was completely different from when she was in the banquet hall. There was a hint of mockery, playfulness, and schadenfreude on her lips. He couldn't help but frown. This little girl didn't know how to protect herself. He suddenly felt a little stifled. He suddenly shook off the hand that was holding Yi Ningen. Yi Ningen took 2 or 3 steps back because of his action before she could stabilize her body. Uncle Li. Yi Ningen didn't expect to meet Li Junxing, nor did she expect to let him see such a side of her. She was still thinking of a way to get along with Li Junxing again, but who knew? Miss Yi, if possible, please call me Mayor Li. Li Junxing had never liked to use his official position to suppress people, but he didn't mind using it today. I wonder what Yi Zhen did? Why did she make you, her sister, attack her? I didn't. Yi Ningen couldn't explain herself. She looked at Yi Zhen, who was standing behind Li Junxing without saying a word, and suddenly realized her vicious intentions. She must have found out that Li Junxing was here early in the morning, which was why she was standing there. She was really too vicious. Whether I did or didn't, I have eyes to see. Li Junxing was quite impolite. Miss Yi, I hope this is the last time. If I see you making things difficult for Yi Zhen again, don't blame me for being rude. His eyes were very cold and sharp. Yi Ningen was so frightened that her body trembled. She wanted to defend herself, but she couldn't say anything. Li Junxing didn't look at her anymore and turned to Yi Zhen. Are you okay? Yi Zhen shook her head. She was fine. In fact, if Li Junxing hadn't made a move just now, she would have been fine. After all, she was a person who had learned grappling techniques. How could she really let Yi Ningen hit her? However, this feeling was a little strange. Since her mother's death, other than her uncle and grandfather, this was the first time someone had stood in front of her to protect her. Yi Zhen couldn't tell what she was feeling. Looking at Li Junxing's side profile, her heart skipped a beat. Li Junxing looked at her dazed expression and thought that she was scared. He pulled her body to his side. Do you still want to go back? Go back? Go back where? Yi Zhen reacted and shook his head. Li Junxing nodded. Let's go. Since we've already greeted each other, there's no harm in leaving just like that. You can do that? Yi Zhen blinked. She had never been so willful before, but to Li Junxing, this was nothing more than a simple matter. She pulled Yi Zhen's hand and walked outside. There was no need to give other people face. He was willing to come today, which was already giving them face. It wasn't until they got in the car that Yi Zhen reacted. Uncle Li, that's not very good, is it? There's nothing bad about it. Li Junxing didn't think there was anything bad about it. Or do you want to go back? Yi Zhen shook her head. In fact, she didn't like such occasions very much. But wouldn't it be bad to leave just like that? I haven't told President Ning yet. It doesn't matter. Li Junxing held her hand and led her outside. You won't mind. There were so many people here today. There was no difference between one less and one more. Yi Zhen got into Li Junxing's car just like that. After getting into the car, Yi Zhen pulled up her long skirt and carefully sat to the side. The driver was still Secretary Qin. This time he didn't even look back. Does your stepsister always bully you? Ha! Yi Zhen was stunned for a moment before she realized that the stepsister he was talking about was Yi Ningen. She shook her head. It's all right. What bullying? Yi Ningen wasn't her match at all. Li Junxing misunderstood what she meant. You should have dodged just like just now. Why did you stand there and let her hit you? How did she let her hit her? Yi Zhen wanted to explain, but when she met the unmistakable concern in Li Junxing's eyes, she fell silent. Ever since her mother passed away, other than her grandfather, uncle and Ling Xian, she hadn't received concern from anyone else for a long time. You haven't eaten, right? What do you want to eat? Anything. After Yi Zhen said this, she suddenly smiled. I don't think it's suitable for me to go out to eat, right? Li Junxing sized her up, turned to look at Secretary Chen in front of him and said a place. Yi Zhen knew the place he was talking about. It was a very famous revolving Western restaurant in Qing City. The chef was French. The French food was quite authentic, but there were also clothing requirements for every customer who went to eat there. There's no need to be so grand, right? It's okay. Only by going there will you live up to your attire today. After entering the restaurant, the two of them were brought to a seat by the window. At this time it was already early evening. From this angle they could see the night view of Qing City. This was a landmark building in Qing City. When it was built, Yi Zhen and her mother had come here once. However, not long after they came here to eat, her mother passed away. After that she never came again. What do you like to eat? Li Junxing looked at the French menu in front of him and raised his head to ask Yi Zhen for her opinion. You order. I'm fine with anything. Recalling her mother, Lu Hui, always made Yi Zhen feel a little sad. In fact, every time she saw Chen Wan, who looked petty and fussy, she didn't understand if Yi Nanshan was blind. If he wasn't blind, why didn't he love his mother and instead fell in love with such a useless woman? Li Junxing ordered and looked at Yi Zhen after the waiter left. What's wrong? Are you still thinking about your stepsister? No. Yi Zhen shook her head and said softly, I've only been here once. My mother brought me here 11 years ago. At that time this place had just opened. But not long after, my mother passed away. I'm sorry. I didn't expect it. It's okay. Anyway, it had been a long time. She had already learned to let it go. Do you want a drink? The red wine here is not bad. Do you want to try it? Ever since what happened last time, Yi Zhen didn't want to drink alone outside. But if that person was Li Junxing, it should be okay, right? Okay, just 2 glasses, but I'm not a good drinker. Don't worry. If you get drunk, I'll definitely send you home properly. Then I'll thank you in advance. Yi Zhen smiled. It had been a long time since she had tried to get along with someone so easily. This was a feeling. Being with Li Junxing made her feel very relaxed. Li Junxing smiled. At this moment, the night outside was a little darker. The lights were shining and the revolving restaurant turned around every hour and a half. During their mealtime, they could see the entire night view of Qing City. Actually, Yi Zhen hadn't relaxed like this in a long time. Especially since the incident with the male prostitute last time. Look, that's the Jianghui company. She pointed at a certain point. Li Junxing followed her gaze and looked over. When he met her eyes that were as bright as stars, his eyes darkened slightly. Do you care about your father's company? No, it's my mother's company that cares a lot. Yi Zhen retracted her gaze and looked at him seriously. Jianghui one day in the future will definitely include my mother's name. Back then, my father started from nothing and founded it with my mother. It's not his. Is that so? Of course. Yi Zhen nodded. Back then, my mother took out all her savings, including my grandfather's, to help my father start his business. In the end, I succeeded. My mother and my grandfather played a part in it. However, she didn't expect that Yi Nanshan could share the hardships with his wife, but not the joys. With money, status, and the company's success, he had a change of heart. She remembered that in the next few years, although her mother looked fine on the surface, she was often depressed. Forget it, let's not talk about this. Li Junxing looked at the loneliness that flashed across her face and suddenly had a suggestion. Have you ever thought of making the company yours? Yi Zhen was stunned for a moment. She had never thought about this. All she could think of was to protect her mother's share. This doesn't seem realistic. As long as you want it, you can. Li Junxing looked at her. The little girl was still too kind. She had never thought of taking the company into her hands. Yi Zhen had never thought about this. She picked up the wine in front of her and took a sip. Alright, in fact, she really did have this idea. She was unwilling. Why should someone else take advantage of the company that my mother built and supported single-handedly? What? She had thought about it, but she hadn't thought about how to achieve her goal more easily. The waiter began to serve the dishes. Li Junxing smiled. Let's eat first. Okay. The food was delicious and the environment was good. The atmosphere of the meal was good. After the main meal was served, it was time for dessert. Yi Zhen couldn't help but look at Li Junxing. Uncle Li, if I really want to snatch my father's company, do you really have this idea? Yes. Yi Zhen nodded, and a flash of coldness appeared in her expression. I want to make the company mine. If Yi Jianhao had been born long after his mother passed away, Yi Zhen wouldn't have hated him so much. However, Yi Nanshan and Chen Wan had been married for less than half a year before they gave birth to Yi Jianhao. His mother's body was still warm. He was just like that. Do you think I'm too ruthless? No. Li Junxing shook his head. If you're not ruthless, your stepsister and stepmother won't let you off. Yes. Yi Zhen chuckled, and there was obvious mockery in her eyes. Even if I don't do anything, they'll still deal with me. Do you need my help? Li Junxing's words stunned Yi Zhen. She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she shook her head hesitantly. Why do you want to help me? Just because of my grandfather? Not entirely. This feeling was a little strange. To Li Junxing, he felt that he had met a girl who made him feel good. Li Junxing was about to speak when his phone rang. She glanced at Yi Zhen. Sorry, I'll take a call first. The phone was from Hu Jinyao. It wasn't convenient for Li Junxing to investigate the previous matter, so he asked Hu Jinyao. "TSK. I didn't know that you would have such luck with women in Qing City." When he found out about this, Hu Jinyao's teasing made Li Junxing very speechless. "If you want such luck with women, I can give it to you." "No need." Hu Jinyao felt a chill. "I don't want to sleep on the sofa at night." "Your family is so strict? It seems that sister-in-law is good at controlling her husband." "My family has always been very strict." Hu Jinyao didn't mind at all. Li Junxing was speechless. However, even if Hu Jinyao was a henpecked man, he was very reliable when it came to business. "I've done what you wanted me to investigate. I've already sent it to your email." "Okay, thank you." "What are you thanking me for?" Hu Jinyao smiled. "Next time you go back to Rong City, just have a few drinks with me." After hanging up the phone, Li Junxing's phone rang with an email notification. He casually clicked it open, and the content made his expression change slightly. He raised his head and looked at Yi Zhen. The dessert was already served. Yi Zhen was eating the cake with a fork. The chocolate crumbs were stuck to the corner of her lips. She noticed that he was looking at her, so she smiled at him. She pushed another dessert in front of him. Li Junxing didn't take the dessert. He lowered his head and finished reading all the information in his hand. There weren't many, only a few pages. Most of them were pictures, so he just flipped through them casually. The email was dragged to the bottom. Li Junxing didn't raise his head. His expression was too serious. Yi Zhen thought that he had something important to deal with. She focused on eating the dessert and didn't want to disturb him at all. Li Junxing read the investigation information again. Then he put down his phone. "Uncle Li, do you have something to do?" Yi Zhen had almost finished the dessert. She knew that the other party was the mayor and was very busy. "If you have something to do, you can go do it first." Her business wasn't urgent. Li Junxing didn't say anything. He just stared at Yi Zhen's face. Yi Zhen felt uncomfortable under his gaze. "What's wrong? Is there something on my face?" She knew that she would blush when she drank, but she only drank 2 glasses. "Yes." Li Junxing nodded. He suddenly reached out and placed his hand on Yi Zhen's lips across the table. Here it stained with chocolate. Yi Zhen was embarrassed. She wanted to wipe it away, but Li Junxing was a step faster than her. He gently wiped the corner of her lips. The warm fingertips brushed the corner of her lips. She was stunned for a moment. For a moment, she just stared blankly at him. "Uncle Li? I'm fine." Li Junxing retracted his hand and looked at the dessert in front of him. "Are you full? Why don't I give this to you too?" "I'm full." His voice was too gentle. It wasn't just his voice. Yi Zhen had a strange feeling when he looked at her and touched her with his fingers. She couldn't help but tell herself that she was thinking too much. Actually, nothing was wrong. Nothing could happen to him. "Yes." Li Junxing nodded and looked out of the window. The revolving restaurant had already turned to the other side. There was the largest amusement park in Qing City. The Ferris wheel inside was lit up and looked very dazzling. Yi Zhen looked in that direction. She had drunk 2 glasses of wine. She wasn't drunk, but her eyes were a little blurry. "It's so beautiful. Do you want to go?" Li Junxing looked at the time. "Let's go now." "It's too late, right?" "Let's go." Li Junxing stood up first as he spoke. She stood up and so did Yi Zhen. "Uncle Li? Don't you want to go?" When did she say that she wanted to go? She only said that the lights over there were beautiful. However, Yi Zhen looked in the direction of the Ferris wheel. This amusement park was newly built this year. She had never been there before. When the park first opened, she felt that there were too many people. She hated crowded places. There was no time to come again. "Okay." Yi Zhen nodded. Her attitude was generous and calm. Li Junxing smiled. The little girl wasn't bashful or pretentious. Very good. After coming down from the revolving restaurant, Secretary Chen's car was already waiting at the door. It would take about half an hour to get to the amusement park. Li Junxing glanced at Yi Zhen. "If you feel tired, you can rest for a while first." Yi Zhen shook her head. However, the alcohol was slowly starting to take effect. She was really a little dizzy. She leaned against the back of the chair and closed her eyes. Li Junxing looked at her side profile, took out his phone again and read the email again. The photo wasn't very clear, but it was enough. In addition to the investigation that night, there was also a copy of Yi Zhen's information. It wasn't much, just 2 simple pages. It could be considered that she had explained her life clearly. Li Junxing wasn't interested in her life. The information that he should know was similar to what Yi Zhen had said before. The only thing that Li Junxing didn't expect was that Yi Zhen was actually the woman that night. After spending the night with him, she disappeared without a trace. His gaze fell on Yizhen again. She didn't really fall asleep. She just closed her eyes to rest. As if sensing that someone was watching, she opened her eyes and met Li Juanxing's gaze. In the dim carriage, the street lamps on both sides shone in. It made Li Juanxing's gaze even more dark and unfathomable. Why was he looking at her like that? Uncle Li? The car made a turn in front, and Yizhen, who was caught off guard, fell into his arms. Li Juanxing hugged her waist at the right time and gently brought her body into his arms. Sit properly. Oh. The alcohol made Yizhen's reaction a little slow. She didn't feel the hand on her waist. She just opened her eyes and looked at Li Juanxing. Uncle Li, why are you looking at me like that? The breath that she exhaled carried a hint of alcohol. Li Juanxing narrowed his eyes. Looking at the red lips that were inches away from him, he looked away. Sleep a little longer. We'll be there soon. Okay. It wasn't that Yizhen wanted to sleep, but the atmosphere in front of her was a little strange. She couldn't tell where to blame it. She closed her eyes and finally realized what was wrong. Just now, she had fallen into Li Juanxing's arms because the car had made a turn. Chapter 766. Yizhen's body stiffened for a moment. She should have pretended to get up inadvertently. Should he keep a distance from Li Juanxing or maintain this posture? If she got up immediately, would Li Juanxing feel uncomfortable? Would it be too intimate if they maintain this position? He's your Uncle Li, an elder, so it doesn't matter. It's not like he's your biological uncle. He's only a few years older than you. Yizhen was a little conflicted. While he was conflicted, they arrived at the amusement park. We're here. Have we arrived? Yizhen pretended to have just woken up and looked out the window. That was fast. Li Juanxing looked at the blush on her face and didn't expose the fact that she hadn't slept at all and that her body had been stiff. Let's go. All right. It was almost 10 o'clock in the evening when he got out of the car. It was time for the amusement park to close. There were only people walking out of the gate. No one was walking in. Uncle Li, are we going to close the garden? It doesn't matter. Li Juanxing took her hand and walked inside. A cool breeze caressed her face. Yizhen could feel the gazes from all around her. She suddenly realized that she had not changed her clothes yet. Uncle Li? Wearing a gown to an amusement park, isn't that a little too high profile? I'm fine. You're not alone. While talking, the two of them had already entered the amusement park. Secretary Chen led the way. However, Li Juanxing clearly didn't intend to let Secretary Chen follow him. The Ferris wheel in the amusement park was located in the inner part of the park, some distance away from the entrance. Li Juanxing held Yizhen's hand and led her inside. She realized that almost everyone inside had left, which made her feel a little more at ease. He was also glad that the clothes he wore today only reached his ankles and not the kind that dragged the ground. What are you thinking about? It's nothing. Yizhen shook her head as if she suddenly realized that her hand was still being held by Li Juanxing. Her face turned red. She was about to pull her hand back. Li Juanxing didn't give her the chance. He held her hand tightly. You're wearing high heels. I'll hold your hand. Speaking of high heels, he couldn't help but glance at her skirt. His mind couldn't help but recall the scene of that night. Although he wasn't fully conscious that day, there were still some scenes that he remembered very clearly. In the darkness, the slender female body wrapped her legs tightly around his body, like a vine wrapped around a tree. He couldn't remember many details of that night, but this scene was the clearest. She could not help but tighten her grip on Yizhen's hand. Yizhen couldn't help but look at Li Juanxing's side profile. Was this the third time they had met? He really took good care of her. Uncle Li, do you take care of all women like this? Li Juanxing glanced at her. What do you think? Hee. How would she know? Yizhen tried to pull his hand back again, but he failed again because the Ferris wheel had arrived. A staff member is waiting there. When he saw the two of them, he gestured for them to enter the cabin. The cabin was quite spacious. It could seat 3 people on each side and 6 people in total. The two of them sat down and fastened their seat belts. The crew closed the hatch. Soon the Ferris wheel started to move. The cockpit began to rise slowly. Yizhen took advantage of the fact that she was looking at the night view outside to pull her hand back. Li Juanxing looked at his empty palm and moved closer to her. Are you afraid? His lowered voice was a little hoarse. He had also drunk some wine, and Yizhen could smell the faint smell of alcohol in the air. She shook her head and took advantage of the movement of shaking her head to sit a little to the side. Li Juanxing watched the little girls escape. He didn't go any further. Instead he took a few steps back. Feeling the little girl's body suddenly relax, he smiled. What an interesting little girl. Did he scare her? The Ferris wheel rose higher and higher. The night view from here was different from the revolving restaurant just now. Yijun looked at the night sky, and the corners of her mouth slowly curled up. She had rarely been so relaxed in the past few years. What she said was true. Ever since that mother and daughter entered the family, her status in the family had plummeted. If it was just a stepmother and a stepsister, Yijun wouldn't have worked so hard. That mother and daughter didn't have the magnanimity to tolerate others and always went against her. Even if she had the support of her uncle and grandfather, she couldn't go to her grandfather and uncle for everything. In addition, Yi Nanshan was biased. In order to deal with that mother and daughter, she had really worked hard for the past few years. There were very few times when she was relaxed like this. When the Ferris wheel was about to rise to the highest point, the cockpit trembled slightly. She turned around and glanced at Li Junxing. Uncle Li, thank you. Whether it was for her grandfather's sake or for other reasons, the relaxation tonight was brought to her by him. Li Junxing looked into her eyes. Jinjin. He called her name and his voice was a little gentle. You really don't remember? Remember what? Yijin didn't understand. Uncle Li? Her eyes were filled with confusion. Her red lips were slightly parted. Because of the wine and the night breeze, her cheeks were dyed red. Li Junxing's eyes darkened. He leaned over and kissed her on the lips. Their lips met and Yijin was shocked. She even forgot how to respond. She just stared blankly at the enlarged face in front of her. What was Uncle Li doing? Her reaction was really very cute. Li Junxing stretched out his arms and couldn't help but pull her into his arms. He exerted a little force on his lips and deepened the kiss. At the same time, the cockpit finally rose to the highest point. Yijin came back to her senses because of the music in the cockpit. She pushed Li Junxing away. There was no anger on her face, nor was there any embarrassment on her face. She just stared at Li Junxing with her clear eyes. Uncle Li, what are you doing? He said that his grandfather was his father's savior. He said that he was of the same generation as his uncle. So, what was he doing just now? Li Junxing's hand gently caressed her lips. It felt different from kissing her. It was soft, a little like jelly. Thinking about kissing her just now, he was a little moved. Perhaps it was the alcohol, or perhaps it was the night. Or perhaps there was no reason. He just wanted to kiss her. He thought so and did so. He turned his head and kissed her lips again. This time it was a little more difficult. Because Yijin began to struggle, she began to push him. Li Junxing wouldn't let her push him away. He pressed her head down, put one hand on her waist and kissed her hard. She wasn't as strong as him and she had drunk alcohol, so her limbs were a little weak. The wind became stronger at this moment, and the cockpit was clearly shaking more than before. Her body lost its balance and she fell into his arms even more. He smiled and there was a faint smile in his eyes. This time not only did he deepen the kiss, but he also almost robbed her of her breath. She couldn't breathe and her face was red. Her entire body was like a cooked shrimp. It wasn't easy for her to find a chance when the cockpit shook again. She pushed him away with force. Yijin gasped for air. Her lips, which he loved so much, were so red that they were almost dripping blood. She glared at him, her eyes filled with accusation. Uncle Li, do you know what you're doing? The anger on her face was too obvious. Even if Li Junxing was her uncle's friend, she wouldn't allow him to treat her like this. I'm kissing you. Li Junxing looked at the anger on her face and smiled. Can't you tell? Of course she could tell. Yijin bit her lip. She thought about Li Junxing's reaction today and what he had said before, and her expression suddenly changed. Mayor Li, she swallowed her saliva and restrained herself from flaring up. I don't know if you've misunderstood something and I don't know what you think of me. But there's one thing I want you to understand. Even if I really want to take back my mother's company, even if I really hate my stepmother and stepsister and don't want them to take advantage of the company, even if you really can help me, I'm not the kind of person you think I am. Mayor Li, I'm not a casual person. If it weren't for the fact that she was in the cockpit and had nowhere to run, she believed that she would definitely leave this place as soon as possible. Are you done? Compared to her eagerness, his calmness was obviously much more indifferent. I'm done. Yijin's back was tightly pressed against the cockpit wall. Her eyes looking at Li Junxing were also completely alert. It could be seen that she had already sobered up. The shaking of the cockpit had lessened a lot, and it was slowly descending. Li Junxing sat in Yijin's direction. Seeing the obvious wariness in her eyes, he smiled. I'm not a casual person either. Yizhen didn't believe him at all, but before she could react, she had already been pulled into Li Juanxing's arms again. He lowered his head and looked at her slightly pouting red lips. He pecked them. Before she could get angry, he smiled and retreated a little, pressing his forehead against hers. Yizhen, I kissed you because I like you. There was a few seconds of silence in the air. Yizhen blinked and looked at the enlarged face in front of her. She suddenly pushed him again. However, he was very tightly trapped and she couldn't break free at all. Merely, Yizhen was angry and the anger on her face hadn't disappeared. I've said it before. I'm not a casual person. I've also said it before. I'm not a casual person either. You said you like me? How many times have we met? How much do you know about me? We've met 3 times. The previous time didn't count. After all, they didn't see each other. But from the first time until now, every time I see you, I like you a little more. Can't I? Yizhen stopped struggling. You mean you fell in love with me at first sight? No. He didn't. Li Juanxing was very clear. I just know that I feel differently about you. Love might be a little lacking, but he definitely liked her. This was the first time he had such a feeling in a woman. Uncle Li, Yizhen was anxious. I'll call you uncle. Don't you think you're going too far? I don't think so. Li Juanxing smiled and kissed her lips again. I think I can go a little further. You? Her lips were plundered by him again. This time, with his previous experience, Li Juanxing easily mastered the technique of kissing. Just like that, he kissed her until her breathing was rapid and she couldn't resist at all. When Yizhen got out of the cockpit, her feet were still a little weak. Li Juanxing held her waist to prevent her from falling. Then he held her like this all the way out of the amusement park and into the car. Yizhen's limbs were weak. She never knew that kissing. It was just a kiss, but it could have such great magic and power. She used all her willpower not to respond to him and cater to him. If that was the case, it would really be too embarrassing. What made her legs weak wasn't just Li Juanxing's kiss, but also his words. He said, Zhinzhin, admit it. You have feelings for my kiss. He said, Zhinzhin, you don't have to think about it. My seniority with you isn't something you need to worry about. In fact, what seniority? He just didn't think in that direction at all. He called Lu Manjiang uncle, but if he wanted to change it, it would be very simple. Zhinzhin, if you don't hate me and you have feelings for my kiss, then I think we can try to get to know each other better. Maybe you'll find that I'm the type you like? Yizhen didn't have the chance to make other choices. She had nowhere to run in the narrow cabin. The Ferris wheel was very big and it took a long time to go around. When the cockpit descended, she was almost always in Li Juanxing's arms. He didn't do anything more excessive, but from time to time he kissed her cheek and her lips. The overwhelming masculine aura wrapped around her layer by layer. There was nowhere for her to run. Uncle Li? Yizhen sat in the car and looked at the street view that flew by on both sides. Her voice was very soft. My house isn't in this direction. Li Juanxing glanced at her and glanced at the wrinkled clothes on her body. He smiled softly. Are you sure you want to go home like this? Her lips were slightly swollen and her eyes were blurry. She didn't even have the strength to walk properly. Was she sure she wanted to go home like this? Yizhen was very embarrassed, but she was very stubborn. I want to go home. Okay, I'll send you home. Li Juanxing smiled and looked at her as if he was looking at a child who was throwing a tantrum. If you want to go home, then go home. However, I'll take you back to change your clothes first. Yizhen didn't say anything. She turned her face away in a fit of pique. Li Juanxing didn't care. She was a little girl. It didn't matter if she had a big temper. He wrapped one hand around her waist. The little girl was still a little thin and her waist was really thin. And he could let her eat a little more in the future. Li Juanxing's impression of that night was very vague. There was only a shadow, a little remnant memory. However, after knowing that that person was Yizhen, the scene of that night seemed to have come alive. The shadow became real, and the little girl's face was replaced by the shadow. The scene of him grabbing her waist and demanding fiercely became more and more clear. As he looked at her beautiful neck, a look of determination flashed across his eyes. At his age, he knew very well what he wanted. Yizhen felt uncomfortable being hugged by him. The presence of the man behind her was too strong. She couldn't stand it and reached out to grab his hand away. She grabbed it away and he put it back. She grabbed it away again and he hugged it again. Yizhen couldn't help but turn around to glare at him, but she met Li Juanxing's smiling eyes. His gaze was as if he was looking at an ignorant child. She blushed inexplicably and looked away again. She was a little annoyed. He wasn't much older than her, right? Why did he treat her like a child? Also, since he treated her like a child, how could he take advantage of her? The car stopped in front of an apartment. Yijin knew about the apartment here. It was developed by the Hua family and the Zhan family. It was one of the top high-end residential areas in Qing City. The confidentiality inside was top-notch. Some celebrities also lived here. The location was also good and it was close to the city center. Li Junxing held Yijin's hand and got out of the car. This was a house with one floor. After entering the elevator and going upstairs, they went straight to Li Junxing's residence. He pressed his finger on the fingerprint identification screen at the door, and the door opened. At first glance, it was decorated in a simple and neat modern style. It was clean and tidy. It was obvious that it was a place where a single man lived. Li Junxing entered the door, changed into a pair of indoor shoes, and placed a pair of disposable slippers in front of her. "Come in." Yijin stood at the door and was a little hesitant. She had a feeling that if she entered the door, she would never be able to escape again. "Don't worry, Secretary Chen is downstairs. After you change your clothes, I'll ask him to send you back." Yijin still didn't move. Li Junxing looked at her hesitant expression and reached out to pull her in. "Come here and sit for a while." Seeing the gloomy expression on Yijin's face, he smiled lightly. "I don't have any women's clothes here. I asked Secretary Chen to buy them. It will take some time. Are you going to stand and wait?" Uncle Li?" Yijin hesitated for a second but decided to call him that. "Thank you for what happened before. In my heart you're an elder." Her lips were blocked again. He kissed her lips, picked her up, and brought her to the sofa to sit down. She was held in his arms like she was in the cockpit just now. She wasn't used to the overly intimate position. She couldn't help but twist her body, wanting to leave his arms. Unexpectedly, she felt as if she was sitting on something hard. Yijin's body suddenly stiffened. She looked at Li Junxing in shock. She couldn't believe that he actually, "Don't move." Li Junxing gripped her waist tightly and pressed her against his chest. "If you move again, I can't guarantee what I'll do. You're shameless." Yijin was really unwilling. She glared at him hatefully. "I'm your niece. My dad only has a sister and no brothers." Li Junxing leaned close to her and said against her neck, "How are you my niece?" "You." Yijin gritted her teeth. "You asked me to call you Uncle Li, and?" Li Junxing nodded. He didn't mind a form of address. "You can continue to call me that in the future. I'll just treat it as fun." When the word fun came out of his mouth, he didn't forget to bite her earlobe. This simple action easily made the blush on Yijin's face spread to her neck. Chapter 767. Li Junxing was addicted to playing with her. It was really fun to watch her blush and her heart beat fast, but she couldn't flare up. "Call me uncle." Shameless, vulgar, and shameless. "Mayor Li, do your citizens know about this?" She didn't believe that he didn't care about his image at all. She had read the Qingxing Morning Post a few days ago, and there was a report on Li Junxing in it. Dressed in a suit and leather shoes, he stood out from the crowd of officials. However, there was a faint smile on his lips. If one looked closely, one could see the calmness in his eyes. But who would know that he was like this in private? If the citizens knew that their mayor was like this in private, she didn't believe that he wouldn't care. So what if I know? So what if I don't know? Li Junxing looked at her little face. The little girl was too young and didn't seem to understand. His slender fingertips caressed her lips. His voice was low and husky. "An unmarried man and an unmarried woman. It's a normal relationship. What's wrong with that?" "You." Yijin grabbed Yi Zichen's hand and tried to make his voice sound normal. "Did I agree to date you?" Li Junxing raised his eyebrows and looked at the suspicion in the little girl's eyes. The little girl didn't seem to believe him. Holding her hand, he looked into her eyes. That pair of deep and beautiful eyes carried a hint of playfulness. "If you don't want to date, you can just get married. Why don't we get the certificate tomorrow?" Was he crazy? Yijin swallowed his saliva and looked at Li Junxing. He felt that if he wasn't abnormal, then he was abnormal. There was a faint smile on his face. She didn't believe that such a big event like marriage was just a game. Thinking about it, there was only one possibility. "Mayor Li, do you have any hidden diseases? Hidden illness?" Li Junxing grabbed her waist and pressed her against his leg. "Is this a hidden illness?" Yijin blushed for her slip of the tongue. She was wrong. How could she mention this in front of a man? She bit her lip and couldn't help but think of another aspect. "Are you gay? You want to hide this true would I so? You've read too many novels." Li Junxing realized that the little girl's imagination was really strange, and her words were really funny. My sexual orientation is normal and I only like women? Do I look like someone you used to love? Or was it your first love? Ah. Li Junxing laughed brightly. If his subordinates were here to see this, their jaws would probably drop. After all, Li Junxing had always given people the feeling that he was rather restrained and gentle. Times like this were really rare. Little girl, are you that unconfident in yourself? Yi Zhen's face was a little red. She understood what Li Junxing meant, but she became more and more uncomfortable. Merely, if you want to go crazy yourself. I don't want to go crazy with you. Yi Zhen was about to stand up after saying that, but Li Junxing easily grabbed her waist and she sat back down. This time, the feeling of being blocked was even more obvious. So you like to roleplay? Li Junxing gently pinched her chin and smiled. Okay, I can cooperate. Cooperate your sister. Yi Zhen couldn't even get angry anymore. She didn't understand why Li Junxing suddenly became abnormal, but in her opinion, there must be something wrong with this matter. At that moment, Li Junxing's phone rang. He glanced at Yi Zhen and picked up the phone. On the other end of the phone was his sister, Li Wanyu. Brother, are you free recently? Come back when you're free. Maybe I don't have much time. What's the matter? He had just been transferred here not long ago and had a lot of things to deal with. You said you have something to do? You didn't come back on Dad's birthday last month. Mom had a cold a few days ago and didn't come home. I found a boyfriend and am about to get engaged, but you didn't come back. Are you planning to wait until I get married and you won't come back? Li Wanyu found a boyfriend? This was a big deal. Li Junxing thought for a moment. Okay, I'll find time to come back. Don't blame me for not reminding you. Mom has prepared a lot of girls from famous families. When you come back, she'll arrange for you to go on a blind date. Li Junxing frowned. Li Wanyu's voice was filled with schadenfreude. Mom's original words were, look at Jinyao's twins. They can already crawl. When is your brother going to find me a wife? Ah. Li Wanyu laughed happily on the other end of the phone. Li Junxing had a headache. In fact, Mother Li really didn't dare to say this in front of him. Now, she was only complaining in front of her sister. Brother, think about it. Look, I've already found a boyfriend. Got it? I'll bring my girlfriend back. Brother, you're not serious, are you? That's it. We'll talk about it when I come back. After hanging up the phone, Li Junxing found that Yi Zhen kept staring at him. What's wrong? Yi Zhen's face had already calmed down. She heard Li Junxing's phone call just now. She had a feeling in her heart. So that's how it is. Xinjin? Li Junxing was just about to tell Yi Zhen that he wanted to bring her home this weekend, but she spoke first. Uncle Li, I agree to this deal. Deal? What deal? I'm willing to pretend to be your girlfriend, but as a reward, I hope that you can help me when I deal with my stepmother and take back my company. Yi Zhen's expression was businesslike, as if he was discussing business. She had thought about it. She didn't want to involve her grandfather and uncle in this matter. Ever since her mother passed away, her grandfather and uncle had been sad enough. She didn't want them to worry anymore. But she had to get the company back. After these few times, she could roughly tell that Li Junxing had the ability and was interested in helping her. Since he was willing to help her, it didn't matter if she pretended to be his girlfriend in return. Li Junxing didn't expect that in such a short time, the little girl had already imagined so much. He suddenly smiled. Do you think that I want to date you and say that I want to marry you because I want you to pretend to be my girlfriend? Isn't that so? Yi Zhen looked like a businessman at this moment. Her exquisite little face had a very serious expression. She looked like she was talking to him about business. Li Junxing wanted to laugh again. It was rare for him to be interested in a woman. However, the little girl obviously didn't think so. Seeing how serious she was, if he told her that he didn't mean it that way, would the little girl be scared? Yi Zhen still looked at him with a serious expression. Seeing her like this, Li Junxing couldn't help but put himself in her shoes. Did she look like this when she was negotiating with others? Sort of. So you're agreeing now? Yes. Yi Zhen nodded. She felt that if she was pretending to be Li Junxing's girlfriend, she could still accept it. Anyway, in the end she would be able to get something, so why not? Li Junxing smiled again, put his arm around her waist and kissed her on the lips. Then it settled. Why are you kissing me again? Since you're going to pretend to be my girlfriend, of course you have to get used to my intimacy, right? That was true, but, so, it's better for you to get used to it. After Li Junxing said that, he hugged Yi Zhen and kissed her again. Yi Zhen wanted to struggle, but she was mesmerized by his kiss. She vaguely felt that something was wrong. Wasn't it fake? Why was he still kissing her? Li Junxing noticed the hesitation in her heart and kissed her even more passionately. Yi Zhen, who was kissed until she couldn't breathe, lost her mind for a moment. She no longer had the energy to think about what was wrong. In order to let Yi Zhen's guard down, Li Junxing didn't keep Yi Zhen for the night. After Secretary Chen brought the clothes up, he waited for Yi Zhen to change her clothes and sent her back. Yi Zhen was a little dizzy. Half of it was because of the wine, and the other half was because of Li Junxing's kiss. However, she wasn't in the mood to think about what was wrong. Li Junxing was very clear about this, so he insisted on getting into the car and sending Yi Zhen home. In the car, Li Junxing held Yi Zhen's hand the entire time. Just as she was about to break free, he whispered into her ear. "If you're not used to my contact, how can you play the role of my girlfriend? So, we have to interact more. Not only do you have to understand me better, but I also have to understand you better. That way it's more like it." It seemed like that was the case. Yi Zhen was tricked by Li Junxing again. How could she know that Li Junxing and uncle would want to scheme against her? For Li Junxing there was still a long way to go. He wasn't in a hurry. Yi Zhen looked at the screen in front of her. She didn't expect the mole to be so calm. It had been so many days, but the mole still hadn't appeared? Could it be that she had made a mistake? That was impossible. Yi Zhen shook her head, clearly not believing it. Seeing that the new plan she had made for Ninghai was about to be sent to Ninghai, she had also told President Ning not to reveal it. In such a situation, could that person really endure it? Yi Zhen didn't believe it. While she was still conflicted, her phone suddenly rang. Looking at the phone number displayed on it, Yi Zhen was stunned for a moment. What kind of note was this? Darling? When did her phone have such a mushy name? Hello, it's you. Are you at work? Yi Zhen was stunned. So that person was Li Junxing? When did she save his phone number, and when did she note the word darling to him? Very busy? Li Junxing's voice came from the other end of the phone. It sounded particularly deep and magnetic. It's okay. Yi Zhen bit her lip. Tomorrow is Saturday. Yi Zhen didn't understand. Did he call her just to tell her that tomorrow was Saturday? I'm going back to Rong City tomorrow. You have to go back with me. Huh? So soon? She wasn't ready yet, although she didn't know what she needed to prepare. I'll pick you up from work later. Huh? Li Junxing could imagine the surprised look on the little girl's face through the phone. He couldn't help but laugh again. He had discovered it long ago. The little girl might be very smart in other aspects, but when it came to relationships she seemed a little slow. Since you're going back to Rong City with me tomorrow, you have to meet me first today. No matter what, you have to understand my preferences. And know some basic information about me, right? That seemed to be the case, but don't worry, we'll meet today and get to know each other first. What do you think? Nothing. Before Yi Zhen could object completely, Li Junxing seemed to know that she was going to refuse. Okay, when you get off work, I'll pick you up. See you later. Yi Zhen held her phone in a daze. Did she agree to date him? No, right? It was just a pretense. There was no need to be so serious, right? When she got off work, Li Junxing indeed came to pick up Yi Zhen. The car stopped downstairs of Jianghui Company. Li Junxing sat in the car and had no intention of getting out. He had already shown his face in Qing City, so it was better to keep a low profile now. Yi Zhen had just received a call from Li Junxing saying that he had arrived downstairs. He told her to come down. When she went downstairs, she didn't expect to meet Yi Ningen. Sister, did you get off work so early today? Yi Ningen looked at Yi Zhen with obvious jealousy and hatred in her eyes. Previously, when she went to President Ning's banquet, she was taught a lesson by Li Junxing and was very angry. What made her even angrier was that when she saw President Ning later, she explicitly hinted that she could also be in charge of this case and would definitely do better than Yi Zhen, but President Ning didn't seem to understand. How could she not be angry? Yi Zhen didn't intend to pay attention to Yi Ningen. She pressed the button on the first floor very calmly and stood a little to the side, as if she would be poisoned if she got any closer to Yi Ningen. Yi Ningen's expression was quite ugly. Looking at Yi Zhen's side profile, she sneered. What are you so proud of? It's just that merely helped you out once. Do you really think he would like you? Ridiculous. Yi Zhen originally didn't intend to respond, but when she mentioned Li Junxing, she smiled. Yes. I don't know if Mayor Li will like me, but I can be sure that he definitely won't like you. As she spoke, she deliberately swept her gaze over the other party. Yi Ningen was furious. You? What if I were you? I would tuck my tail between my legs. After all, if I become the mayor's wife in the future, you won't have a good time. She used to disdain using her power to oppress people. But if she could really make Yi Ningen unhappy, she would be very happy. Dream on. Yi Ningen didn't believe it at all. Don't think you can scare me with these words. Who is Mayor Li? You want to marry him? You're delusional. When the elevator reached the first floor, Yi Zhen smiled. The moment she stepped out of the elevator, she turned to look at Yi Ningen. Delusional? Do you want to try? What? Let's see if I can marry Mayor Li in the end. Let's see who's delusional. As she spoke, she took out her phone and pressed Li Juanxing's number. She looked at Yi Ningen, who was standing in front of her, and smiled smugly at her. When she spoke to the phone, her tone was different. Chapter 768. Li Junxing was originally sitting in the car waiting for Yi Zhen. When he heard Yi Zhen say that he had sprained his ankle, he put down his phone and quickly went into the shogi company. He didn't even care if his actions would be seen by others. He got off the car and walked towards the shogi company. With his outstanding looks and tall stature, he received a lot of attention when he entered the shogi company. However, Li Junxing ignored all of them. He quickly walked to the elevator and found Yi Zhen standing on one foot with one hand on the wall. Yi Zhen? He rushed forward and looked at her feet with concern. How are you? Are you all right? Li Junxing came a little faster than Yi Zhen had imagined. When Yi Zhen saw him appear so quickly, there was a hint of surprise in his eyes. In fact, she just wanted to annoy Yi Ningen. In fact, she really didn't think Li Junxing would come in. After all, there were so many people here. What if someone recognized him? Uncle Li? Where are you hurt? Is it serious? Yi Ningen thought that Yi Zhen was joking before. She didn't expect that she could really call Mayor Li. Her face was distorted for a while. She reluctantly took a step forward. Uncle Li, she didn't sprain herself, she just... Shut up. Li Junxing didn't even look at Yi Ningen. He looked at Yi Zhen's motionless figure and picked her up. Yi Zhen's body was suspended in the air, startling her. She instinctively wrapped her arms around Li Junxing's neck. She didn't expect Li Junxing to be so strong even though he looked thin. He carried her and strode outside. From the beginning to the end, he didn't even look at Yi Ningen. Yi Ningen was very angry. He glared hatefully at Yi Zhen and his companions' backs as they left, a flash of resentment in his eyes. Yi Zhen, we are irreconcilable enemies. When Yi Zhen was carried out by Li Junxing, she noticed that many people were looking in her direction. She was very embarrassed, but she had already acted. She could only bury her head in Li Junxing's chest and try her best to reduce her presence. Li Junxing put Yi Zhen in the back seat of the car and followed her into the car. He instructed Secretary Chen, who was in front, to drive. Secretary Chen hurried to the hospital. After that, he looked at Yi Zhen. Which leg did you sprain? How are your injuries? Is it serious? Yi Zhen didn't say anything. She just stared at Li Junxing. Her heart was beating fast. She bit her lip and looked at Li Junxing with a complicated gaze. She had never thought that there would be someone who would stand by her side for no reason at all. To her, this feeling was simply too inconceivable. She still remembered the first year when Yi Ningen followed Chen into the family. At that time, she, who was still young, also thought of building a good relationship with Yi Ningen. However, after being framed by Yi Ningen several times and knowing that Chen was pregnant, she dispelled this idea. What made her sad was not Yi Ningen's frame-up, but Yi Nanshan stood on Yi Ningen's side for no reason and blamed Chen and her mother. Yi Ningen was a sweet talker and often coaxed Yi Nanshan to be happy. She was angry at first, but she got used to it. Yi Nanshan was used to blaming her no matter whether it was her fault or not. Today she did it on purpose, but she didn't expect. Which ankle did you sprain? Does it hurt? Li Junxing realized that she didn't speak and was a little worried. He bent down to check her feet. Come on, let me see. Yi Zhen subconsciously shrunk her feet back. I didn't sprain it. It was a little difficult for her to say these simple words. She bit her lip and felt a little uncomfortable. I didn't sprain it. I just wanted to anger her on purpose. Her voice was like a mosquito. This was the first time she had done such a thing, so she didn't have enough confidence. I'm sorry. He was mocking me at that time, so I couldn't help but want to anger him. Her voice was very soft. I'm sorry, my foot isn't injured. I made you worry. Li Junxing was stunned for a moment. He looked at Secretary Chen in front of him and changed the address. After thinking for a moment, he pressed the glass in the middle of the car seat. Soon, the car was separated, leaving only her and Li Junxing behind. Uncle Li, are you angry? Yi Zhen pursed her lips, her eyes a little uneasy. It's good that you're fine. Li Junxing pulled her hand and found that it was a little cold. He wrapped her hand in his palm. You're not angry? Why should I be angry? Yi Zhen didn't know what to say. She just stared straight at Li Junxing's face. I used to. Aren't you angry? Li Junxing looked at her nervous expression and couldn't help but laugh. He leaned over and kissed her on the lips. Yes, I know. Then why wasn't she angry? Curiosity won out. She didn't even care that he was taking advantage of her again. It's a good thing to be used by others. At least it means that you still have value in others' hearts. If a person lives in this world and no one wants to use him, that would be a tragedy. Moreover, the little girl knew how to use him to attack the people she hated. This meant that his position in her heart had begun to change. Of course, he wouldn't be angry because of this. Yi Zhen didn't say anything. These words completely subverted her understanding. She hadn't been educated like this since she was young. Her mother, grandfather, and uncle had never taught her these things. So, she could think like this? Li Junxing reached out and gently stroked her cheek. Besides, I'm your boyfriend. I'm very happy that you're using me. Boyfriend? Yi Zhen bit her lip. Uncle Li, you know it's fake. Regardless of whether it's real or fake, since we had an agreement, we have to treat it as real, right? Li Junxing squeezed her hand. Look, you've already promised to play the role of my girlfriend well, but you keep reminding yourself that it's fake. How can you really play it well like this? Yi Zhen was stunned. She looked at Li Junxing. It seemed that it was really like that. So, Zhenjin, what you have to do now is not to think about whether you're pretending or not. Instead, you really think of yourself as my girlfriend. Only when you believe that you're real can you convince others to believe you, right? Yi Zhen was speechless. That seemed to be the case, but she felt that something was wrong. Li Junxing looked at her expression and pulled her into his arms again. He lowered his head and accurately blocked her lips. He stopped and pressed his forehead against hers. Tell yourself that you're not pretending. You're real. You're my girlfriend. Only when you convince yourself can you convince others. Li, the rest of her words were kissed away by him again. This time it was much more intense than before. Yi Zhen's limbs went limp from his kiss. Her body was weak and she leaned into his arms. Finally he let go of her. She caught her breath and gasped for air. Uncle Li, look, you're getting more and more used to my kiss. After a few more kisses, you'll believe more and more that you're my girlfriend. Did she still have to believe such a thing? She wasn't at all. It was just a fake. Alright, don't think about it anymore. I'll take you to dinner. Uncle Li, since you want to pretend to be my girlfriend, then start by understanding my preferences and habits. Li Junxing looked at her with curved eyebrows. His hand tightly wrapped around hers. The warmth of the room made her unable to say anything else. She suddenly realized that there was no need to pretend, right? Even if she was his real girlfriend, there would be many women who would be willing, right? This was a private restaurant with good privacy. After Li Junxing ordered, he looked at Yi Zhen, who was sitting opposite him. Since you're coming back to Rong City with me tomorrow, there's something I want to tell you first. Go ahead. Yi Zhen hadn't recovered from the kiss just now. She sat very solemnly. I'm 33 years old this year. Because I was busy with work before, I never thought about getting married. You're my first girlfriend. How was that possible? Yi Zhen looked at him suspiciously. My family is in Rong City. Other than my parents, I have a younger sister. My father is now working in the province. My mother is the vice president of the Women's Chamber of Commerce. She's also the vice president of the Rong City Bank. Yi Zhen blinked. She had long known that Li Junxing's family was extraordinary, but she didn't expect it. Your parents? Don't worry, my parents are very open-minded people. Ever since I turned 30, they want me to get married immediately. They won't interfere with what kind of girlfriend I find. Was that so? Yi Zhen was a little suspicious, but she quickly shook her head. It doesn't matter if they object. I'm fake anyway. Strangely, when she said this, she felt a little uncomfortable in her heart. Such an outstanding man must have a lot of women who liked him. It was probably just that he didn't want them usually. Even if you're fake, you have to have some professionalism, right? That was true. Yi Zhen nodded and sat up straight. Alright then. Go on. What do you like and what don't you like? She thought for a moment and suddenly raised her hand. Wait, I'll write down what you said. Seeing that she took out her phone to record, Li Junxing smiled. You don't have to be so dramatic. You just have to remember it. I don't have anything I particularly like, nor do I particularly hate. You don't have to be too nervous. Really, you don't have to remember a lot. Seriously, I'm allergic to mangoes. I can't eat mangoes. As a person who wanted to get back on track, he wouldn't let himself have too obvious a weakness for others to know. By the way, what about you? Do you have any special preferences? Me? That's right. Since you're my girlfriend, I have to know your preferences and taboos, right? Otherwise, if my mom asks, won't I be exposed? Oh. Yijin nodded. I'm about the same as you. In terms of food, I like vegetables more than meat. I like fish and don't really like red meat except for beef. Also, I'm allergic to honey. As she spoke, she realized that 2 of the dishes that Li Junxing had ordered were her favorites. She reminded herself that this was impossible and unrealistic. But she couldn't help but think in that direction. Li Junxing didn't order dishes because he knew her preferences, did he? How was that possible? When Yi Zhen returned home, Yi Nanshan, Chen Wan, Yi Ningen and her 10-year-old brother Yi Jianhao were all there. When she entered the door, the eyes of the family fell on her in unison. Yi Zhen acted as if she didn't see them. After calling her dad, she planned to go upstairs to her room. Stop. Yi Nanshan looked at his daughter and was a little angry. You didn't even greet the elders when you came back? Where are your manners? I already called you just now. Yi Zhen stood still with an indifferent expression. As for the other elders, I didn't see them. You? Yi Nanshan was so angry that he slammed the table. Chen Wan pulled his hand at the right time. All right, the child is tired from playing outside. Don't be so angry. She kept giving Yi Nanshan a look, and Yi Nanshan sat down. Who sent you back just now? Who sent me back? Don't you know? As she spoke, she glanced at Yi Ningen. She didn't believe that Yi Ningen wouldn't tell Chen Wan and the others. Yi Zhen, what's with your attitude? Is this how you talk to your elders? I think my attitude is pretty good. You. Yi Nanshan was about to lose his temper again, but he still had some concerns. He sent you back, why didn't you bring him in? No matter what, you should let him have a cup of tea before leaving, right? No need. It's not good for your health to drink tea so late at night. Yi Nanshan was angry. Chen Wan stood up. Xinjin, look at you. Why are you so rash? Your father is just concerned about you. After all, you're still too young. You're always so inconsiderate when dealing with people. It's good for you to have an elder to consult with so that your relationship can go further, don't you think so? What relationship? Yi Zhen blinked, looking like he didn't understand. Auntie, why don't I understand what you're saying? You? Chen Wan couldn't hold it in anymore. Didn't you say that? You're going to be the mayor's wife? Yi Zhen was shocked. Did I say that? What are you thinking? Uncle Li is an elder. He just sent me back for my grandfather's sake. Yi Ningen was furious. She stood up. Yi Zhen, why are you pretending? Didn't you say that? Today Mayor Li went to pick you up and he even carried you. So many people saw it. Do you want to deny it? What a joke. Yi Zhen laughed. I sprained my ankle. Uncle Li was kind enough to take me to the doctor. When did I say that I'm going to marry Uncle Li? As she spoke, she glanced at Yi Nanshan. Dad, Uncle Li and I are 1 generation apart. Aren't you afraid of being laughed at for saying that? You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.